Section 0 of Jack of Newbury. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Thomas Copeland. The History of John Winchomb, usually called Jack of Newbury, by Thomas Deloney. Section 1. Preface. Warwick is not more popularly associated with the adventures of the celebrated knight Sir Guy, nor Southampton with those of the equally renowned Sir Bevis, than is Newbury with the name of the prosperous clothier John Winchomb, who for nearly 3 centuries, if not for a longer period, has been distinguished by the familiar appellation of Jack of Newbury. There is, however, this distinction peculiar to the history of the last-named personage, that whereas even the names of Guy and Bevis are fictitious, the popular novel of Jack of Newbury concerns not merely a real individual, but details circumstances founded partially on well-ascertained facts and partially on details derived from traditional sources. Jack's real name was John Winchomb, alias Smallwood, an eminent clothier of Newbury during the reigns of Henry VII and Henry VIII. He realized a large fortune, and amongst other benefactions to Newbury is said to have built the church vestry. In his will, dated in January 1519, the year in which he died, he is described as John Smallwood the elder, alias John Winchomb, of the parish of St. Nicholas in Newbury. He gives to the parish church of Newbury, towards the building and edifying of the same, £40, besides donations to the various altars. He directs that he should be buried in Our Lady chancel within the parish church of Newbury aforesaid, by Alice my wife, and a stone to be laid upon us both. His wife Alice had been long dead at the date of this will, and he had again married, and left a widow named Joan, who was mentioned and liberally provided for. There are also legacies to numerous individuals and to every one of his servants. Amongst the former may be mentioned 40 shillings to Sir John Waite, parson of Newbury, for the recompense of my tithes, negligently forgotten. The Sir, it is hardly necessary to observe, not being the title of knighthood, but the ordinary anglicized one for Dominus, the scholastic denomination of clergymen, as we have the Parson Evans termed Sir Hugh Evans in The Merry Wives of Windsor. The will was proved on March 24, 1519, by the testator's son John, who was residuary legatee. John Winchomb died within a few weeks after the date of this will, as appears from a brass effigy in Newbury Church, bearing the following inscription: "Of your charity, pray for the soul of John Smallwood, alias Winchomb, and Alice his wife." John died on the 15th day of February, A.D. 1519. This memorial must be distinguished from a stone monument of a man in armor with 3 wives, 6 sons, and 5 daughters, which is sometimes vulgarly stated to represent Jack and his children, but which really belongs to another family. Winchomb died at an advanced age, 6 years after the Battle of Flodden, so that the tradition that he was present at that celebrated contest is probably an error, though it is very possible that he may have furnished a company for the service of his country. There is also a tradition that he entertained Henry VIII and Queen Catherine at Newbury. The site of his house is believed to have been partly the ground upon which the inn bearing his name now stands, and it is said that his workshops extended to the marsh. Certain it is that ancient carvings, some of which undoubtedly belonged to the Winchomb family in the 16th century, were discovered some years ago in pulling down old buildings in that locality. Jack's family attained to some social distinction, for his eldest son John obtained the grant of arms, and one of his descendants was the owner of Donnington Castle. A portrait of this son, taken in 1550, when he was in the 61st year of his age, is, I am told, still preserved at Newbury. Supposing, therefore, that Jack himself married very early in life, this fact of the son's age in the year 1550 would incline us to place the father's birth at 1470 at the very latest, but he probably first saw the light some years before the date last mentioned. Some of the principal facts in the life of Winchomb were unquestionably in traditional circulation at Newbury at the close of the 16th century. For when that prolific pamphleteer and novelist, Thomas Deloney, made him the subject of a romance, the leading circumstances in his history were faithfully adhered to. Deloney's novel of Jack Newbury was licensed to T. Millington on March 7, 1596, and it was undoubtedly published soon after that period, but no copy of so early a date is now known to exist, the earliest one I have met with being the 9th edition, published by Cuthbert Wright in 1633. This is, no doubt, with the exception of the orthography and perhaps some little of the idiomatic language, a faithful reproduction of the earlier copies. This complete version was several times republished, and in the last century abridged editions of it were sometimes issued, and the modern chapbook copies are generally mere fragments of the original. The romance, although highly illustrative of old manners and customs, is of small literary merit. It chiefly consists of a number of desultory stories, some of which have no relation to the subject of the history, and ends, like Rasselas, with a conclusion in which nothing is concluded. End of section 0, read by Thomas Copeland. Section 1 of Jack of Newbury by Thomas Deloney. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Thomas Copeland. The pleasant history of John Winchomb, in his younger years called Jack of Newbury, the famous and worthy clothier of England, declaring his life and love, together with his charitable deeds and great hospitality, and how he set continually 500 poor people at work, to the great benefit of the Commonwealth, worthy to be read and regarded, now the 9th time imprinted, corrected, and enlarged by T.G. Haud Curo Invidiam, London, printed by Robert Young, and are to be sold by Cuthbert Wright, 1633. To all famous cloth workers in England I wish all happiness of life, prosperity, and brotherly affection. Among all manual arts used in this land, none is more famous for desert, or more beneficial to the Commonwealth, than is the most necessary art of clothing, and therefore, as the benefit thereof is great, so are the professors of the same to be both loved and maintained. Many wise men, therefore, having deeply considered the same, most bountifully have bestowed their gifts for upholding of so excellent a commodity, which hath been, and yet is, the nourishing of many thousands of poor people. Wherefore, to you, most worthy clothiers, do I dedicate this my rude work, which hath raised out of the dust of forgetfulness a most famous and worthy man, whose name was John Winchomb, alias Jack of Newbury, of whose life and love I have briefly written, and in a plain and humble manner, that it may be the better understood of those for whose sakes I take pains to compile it, that is, for the well-minded clothiers, that herein they may behold the great worship and credit which men of this trade have in former time come unto. If therefore it be of you kindly accepted, I have the end of my desire, and think my pains well recompensed. And finding your gentleness answering my hope, it shall move me shortly to set to your sight the long-hidden history of Thomas of Reading, George of Gloucester, Richard of Worcester, and William of Salisbury, with divers others, who were all most notable members in the Commonwealth of this land, and men of great fame and dignity. In the mean space I commend you all to the Most High God, who ever increase in all perfection and prosperous estate the long-honoured trade of English clothiers. Yours in all humble service, T.D. The most pleasant and delectable history of John Winchomb, otherwise called Jack of Newbury, and first of his love and pleasant life. Chapter 1. In the days of King Henry VIII, that most noble and victorious prince, in the beginning of his reign, John Winchomb, a broadcloth weaver, dwelt in Newbury, a town in Berkshire, who, for that he was a man of merry disposition and honest conversation, was wondrous well beloved of rich and poor, especially because in every place where he came, he would spend his money with the best, and was not any time found a churl of his purse. Wherefore, being so good a companion, he was called of old and young Jack of Newbury, a man so generally well known in all his country for his good fellowship, that he could go in no place but he found acquaintance, by means whereof Jack could no sooner get a crown, but straight he found means to spend it. Yet had he ever this care, that he would always keep himself in comely and decent apparel, neither at any time would he be overcome in drink, but so discreetly behave himself with honest mirth and pleasant conceits, that he was every gentleman's companion. After that Jack had long led this pleasant life, being, though he were but poor, in good estimation, it was his master's chance to die, and his dame to be a widow, who was a very comely ancient woman, and of reasonable wealth. Wherefore she, having a good opinion of her man John, committed unto his government the guiding of all her workfolks for the space of 3 years together, in which time she found him so careful and diligent that all things came forward and prospered wondrous well. No man could entice him from his business all the week, by all the entreaty they could use, insomuch that in the end some of the wild youths of the town began to deride and scoff at him. Doubtless, quoth one, I doubt some female spirit hath enchanted Jack to his treadles, and conjured him within the compass of his loom, that he can stir no further. You say truth, quoth Jack, and if you have the leisure to stay till the charm be done, the space of 6 days and 5 nights, you shall find me ready to put on my holyday apparel, and on Sunday morning, for your pains, I will give you a pot of ale over against the Maypole. Nay, quoth another, I'll lay my life, that as the salamander cannot live without the fire, so Jack cannot live without the smell of his dame's smock. And I marvel, quoth Jack, that you, being of the nature of the herring, which so soon as he is taken out of the sea straight dies, can live so long with your nose out of the pot. Nay, Jack, leave thy jesting, quoth another, and go along with us. Thou shalt not stay a jot. And because I will not stay, nor make you a liar, quoth Jack, I'll keep me here still, and so farewell. Thus then they departed, and after they had for 50 score of times tried him to this intent, and saw he would not be led by their lure, they left him to his own will. Nevertheless, every Sunday in the afternoon, and every holy day, Jack would keep them company, and he as merry as a pie, and having still good store of money in his purse, one or other would ever be borrowing of him, but never could he get penny of it again, which when Jack perceived, he would never after carry above 12 pence at once in his purse, and that being spent, he would straight return home merrily, taking his leave of the company in this sort: My masters, I thank you, 'tis time to pack home, for he that wants money is counted a mome, and 12 pence a Sunday being spent in good cheer, to 52 shillings amounts in the year, enough for a craftsman that lives by his hands, and he that exceeds it shall purchase no lands. For that I spend this day, I'll work harder tomorrow, for woe is that party that seeketh to borrow. My money doth make me full merry to be, and without my money none careth for me. Therefore, wanting money, what should I do here, but haste home and thank you for all my good cheer. Thus was Jack's good government and discretion noted of the best and substantialest men of the town, so that it wrought his great commendation, and his dame thought herself not a little blessed to have such a servant, that was so obedient unto her, and so careful for her profit. For she had never a prentice that yielded her more obedience than he did, or was more dutiful, so that by his good example he did as much good as by his diligent labour and travail, which his singular virtue being noted by the widow, she began to cast very good countenance to her man John, and to use very much talk with him in private. And first, by way of communication, she would tell unto him what suitors she had, and the great offers they made her, what gifts they sent her, and the great affection they bare her, craving his opinion in the matter. When Jack found the favour to be his dame's secretary, he thought it an extraordinary kindness, and guessing by the yarn it would prove a good web, began to question with his dame in this sort: Although it becometh not me your servant to pry into your secrets, nor to be busy about matters of your love, yet for so much as it hath pleased you to use conference with me in those causes, I pray you let me entreat you to know their names that be your suitors, and of what profession they be. Marry, John, saith she, that you shall, and I pray thee take a cushion and sit down by me. Dame, quoth he, I thank you, but there is no reason I should sit on a cushion till I have deserved it. If thou hast not, thou mightest have done, said she, but faint shoulders never find favour. John replied, That makes me indeed to want favour, for I durst not try maidens because they seem coy, nor wives for fear of their husbands, nor widows doubting their disdainfulness. Tush, John, quoth she, he that fears and doubts womankind cannot be counted mankind. And take this for a principle, all things are not as they seem. But let us leave this, and proceed to our former matter. My first suitor dwells at Wallingford, by trade a tanner, a man of good wealth, and his name is Crafts, of comely personage, and very good behaviour, a widower, well thought of amongst his neighbours. He hath proper land, a fair house, and well furnished, and never a child in the world, and he loves me passing well. Why then, dame, quoth John, you are best to have him. Is that your opinion? Quoth she. Now trust me, so it is not mine, for I find two special reasons to the contrary. The one is, that he, being overworn in years, makes me overloath to love him, and the other, that I know one nearer hand. Believe me, dame, quoth Jack, I perceive store is no sore, and proffered ware is worse by 10 in the 100 than that which is sought. But I pray ye, who is your second suitor? John, quoth she, it may seem a modesty in me to bewray my love's secrets, yet, seeing thy discretion, and being persuaded of thy secrecy, I will show thee. The other is a man of middle years, but yet a bachelor, by occupation a tailor, dwelling in Hungerford, by report a very good husband, such a one as hath crowns good store, and to me he professes much good will. For his person he may please any woman. Ay, dame, quoth John, because he pleaseth you. Not so, said she, for my eyes are unpartial judges in that case, and, albeit my opinion may be contrary to others, if his art deceive not my eyesight, he is worthy of a good wife, both for his person and conditions. Then trust me, dame, quoth John, forasmuch as you are without doubt of yourself that you will prove a good wife, and so well persuaded of him, I should think you could make no better choice. Truly, John, quoth she, there is also two reasons that move me not to like of him. The one, that being so long a ranger, he would at home be a stranger, and the other, that I like better of one nearer hand. Who is that? Quoth Jack. Saith she, the third suitor is the parson of Spinholm land, who hath a proper living. He is of holy conversation and good estimation, whose affection to me is great. No doubt, dame, quoth John, you may do wondrous well with him, for you shall have no care but to serve God, and to make ready his meat. O John, quoth she, the flesh and the spirit agrees not, for he will be so bent to his book that he will have little mind of bed. For 1 month studying for a sermon will make him forget his wife a whole year. Truly, dame, quoth John, I must needs speak in his behalf, and the rather for that he is a man of the church, and your near neighbour, to whom, as I guess, you bear the best affection. I do not think that he will be so much bound to his book, or subject to the spirit, but that he will remember a woman at home or abroad. Well, John, quoth she, I wis my mind is not that way, for I like better one nearer at hand. No marvel, quoth Jack, you are so peremptory, seeing you have so much choice. But I pray you, dame, quoth he, let me know this fortunate man that is so highly placed in your favour. John, quoth she, they are worthy to know nothing that cannot keep something. That man, I tell thee, must go nameless, for he is lord of my love, and king of my desires. There is neither tanner, tailor, nor parson may compare with him. His presence is a preservative to my health, his sweet smiles my heart's solace, and his words heavenly music in my ears. Why then, dame, quoth John, for your body's health, your heart's joy, and your ear's delight, delay not the time, but entertain him with a kiss. Make his bed next yours, and chop the match in the morning. Well, quoth she, I perceive thy consent is quickly got to any, having no care how I am matched, so I be matched. I wis I could not let thee go so lightly, being loath that any one should have thee, except I could love her as well as myself. I thank thee for your kindness and good will, good dame, quoth he, But it is not wisdom for a young man that can scantily keep himself to take a wife. Therefore I hold it the best way to lead a single life, for I have heard say that many sorrows follow marriage, especially where want remains, and besides, it is a hard matter to find a constant woman. For as young maids are fickle, so are old women jealous, the one a grief too common, the other a torment intolerable. What, John, quoth she, consider that maidens' fickleness proceeds of vain fancies, but old women's jealousy of superabounding love, and therefore the more to be borne withal. But, dame, quoth he, many are jealous without cause, for it is sufficient for their mistrusting natures to take exception at a shadow, at a word, or a look, at a smile, nay, at the twinkle of an eye, which neither man nor woman is able to expel. I knew a woman that was ready to hang herself for seeing but her husband's shirt hang on a hedge with her maid's smocks. I grant that this fury may haunt some, quoth she, yet there is many other that complain not without great cause. Why, is there any cause that should move jealousy, quoth John? Ay, by St. Mary is there, quoth she. For would it not grieve a woman, being one every way able to delight her husband, to see him forsake her, despise and contemn her, being never so merry as when he is in other company, sporting abroad from morning till noon, from noon till night, and when he comes to bed, if he turn to his wife, it is in such sullenness and wearisome drowsy lameness that it brings rather loathsomeness than any delight? Can you then blame a woman in this case to be angry and displeased? I'll tell you what, among brute beasts it is a grief intolerable. For I heard my grandame tell that when the bellwether of her flock, fancying one of the ewes above the rest, and seeing gratis the shepherd abusing her, could by no means bear that abuse, but watching opportunity for revenge, on a time found the said shepherd sleeping in the field, and suddenly ran against him in such violent sort that by the force of his wreathed horns he beat the brains out of the shepherd's head, and slew him. If then a sheep could not endure that injury, think not that women are so sheepish to suffer it. Believe me, quoth John, if every horn-maker should be so plagued by a horned beast, there should be less horns made in Newbury by many in a year. But, dame, quoth he, to make an end of this prattle, because it is an argument too deep to be discussed between you and I, you shall hear me sing an old song, and so we will depart to supper. A maiden fair I dare not wed, for fear to have Actaeon's head. A maiden black is often proud, a maiden little will be loud. A maiden that is high of growth, they say, is subject unto sloth. Thus, fair or foul, yea, little or tall, some faults remain among them all. But of all the faults that be, none is so bad as jealousy. For jealousy is fierce and fell, and burns as hot as fire in hell. It breeds suspicion without cause, and breaks the bonds of reason's laws. To none it is a greater foe than unto those where it doth grow. And God keep me both day and night from that fell, fond, and ugly sprite. For why, of all the plagues that be, the secret plague is jealousy. Therefore I wish all womankind never to bear a jealous mind. Well said, John, quoth she, thy song is not so true, but thy voice is as sweet. But, seeing the time agrees with our stomachs, though loath, yet will we give over for this time, and betake ourselves to our suppers. Then, calling the rest of her servants, they fell to their meal merrily, and after supper the goodwife went abroad for her recreation, to walk a while with one of her neighbours, and in the mean space John got him up into his chamber, and there began to meditate on this matter, bethinking with himself what he were best to do, for well he perceived that his dame's affection was great towards him. Knowing therefore the woman's disposition, and withal that her estate was reasonable good, and considering beside that he should find a house ready furnished, servants ready taught, and all other things for his trade necessary, he thought it best not to let slip that good occasion, lest he should never come to the like. But again, when he considered her years to be unfitting to his youth, and that she that sometime had been his dame would perhaps disdain to be governed by him that had been her poor servant, that it would prove but a bad bargain, doubting many inconveniences that might grow thereby. He therefore resolved to be silent rather than to proceed further. Wherefore he got him straight to bed, and the next morning settled himself close to his business. His dame coming home, and hearing that her man was gone to bed, took that night but small rest, and early in the morning, hearing him up at his work, merrily singing, she by and by arose, and in seemly sort attiring herself, she came into the workshop, and sat her down to make quills. Quoth John, "Good morrow, dame. How do you to-day?" "God a mercy, John," quoth she, "even as well as I may. For I was sore troubled in my dreams. Methought two doves walked together in a cornfield, the one, as it were, in communication with the other, without regard of pecking up anything to sustain themselves. And after they had with many nods spent some time to their content, they both fell hard with their pretty bills to peck up the scattered corn left by the weary reaper's hand. At length, finding themselves satisfied, it chanced another pigeon to light in that place, with whom one of the first pigeons at length kept company, and after, returning to the place where she left her first companion, perceiving he was not there, she, kindly searching up and down the high stubble to find him, lighted at length on a hog fast asleep, wherewith methought the poor dove was dismayed, that presently she fell down in a trance. I, seeing her legs fail and her wings quiver, yielding herself to death, moved with pity, ran unto her, and thinking to take up the pigeon, methought I had in my hands my own heart, wherein methought an arrow stuck so deep that the blood trickled down the shaft, and lay upon the feathers like the alder-pearl dew on the green grass, which made me to weep most bitterly. But presently methought there came one to me crowned like a queen, who told my heart would die except in time I got some of that sleeping hog's grease to heal the wounds thereof. Whereupon I came in all haste to the hog, with my heart bleeding in my hand, who, methought, grunted at me in most churlish sort, and vanished out of my sight. Whereupon, coming straight home, methought I found this hog rustling among my looms, wherewith I presently awaked, suddenly after midnight, being all in a sweat and very ill. And I am sure you could not choose but hear my groan. "Trust me, dame, I heard you not," quoth John. "I was so sound asleep." "And thus," quoth she, "a woman may die in the night before you will have the care to see what she ails, or ask what she lacks. But truly, John," quoth she, "all is one, for if thou shouldst have come, thou couldst not have got in, because my chamber door was locked. But while I live, this shall teach me wit, for henceforth I will have no other lock but a latch, till I am married." "Then, dame," quoth he, "I perceive, though you be curious in your choice, yet at length you will marry." "Ay, truly," quoth she, "so thou wilt not hinder me." "Who, I?" quoth John. "On my faith, dame, not for 100 pounds, but rather will further you to the uttermost of my power." "Indeed," quoth she, "thou hast no reason to show any discourtesy to me in that matter, although some of our neighbours do not stick to say that I am sure to thee already." "If it were so," quoth John, "there is no cause to deny it, or to be ashamed thereof, knowing myself far unworthy of so high a favour." "Well, let this talk rest," quoth she, "and take there thy quills, for it is time for me to go to market." Thus the matter rested for 2 or 3 days, in which space she daily devised which way she might obtain her desire, which was to marry her man. Many things came in her head, and sundry sleights in her mind, but none of them did fit her fancy, so that she became wondrous sad, and as civil as the 9 Sibyls. And in this melancholy humour she continued 3 weeks or a month, till at last it was her luck upon a Bartholomew day, having a fair in the town, to spy her man John give a pair of gloves to a proper maid for a fairing, which the maiden with a bashful modesty kindly accepted, and requited it with a kiss, which kindled in her an inward jealousy, but notwithstanding very discreetly she covered it, and closely passed along unspied of her man or the maid. She had not gone far, But she met with one of her suitors, namely the tailor, who was very fine and brisk in his apparel, and needs would bestow the wine upon the widow, and after some faint denial, meeting with a gossip of hers, to the tavern they went, which was more courtesy than the tailor could ever get of her before, showing herself very pleasant and merry. And finding her in such a pleasing humour, the tailor, after a new quart of wine, renewed his old suit. The widow with patience heard him, and gently answered that in respect of his great good will long time borne unto her, as also in regard of his gentleness, cost, and courtesy at the present bestowed, she would not flatly deny him. Therefore, quoth she, seeing this is not a place to conclude of such matters, if I may entreat you to come to my poor house on Thursday next, you shall be heartily welcome, and be further satisfied of my mind. And thus preferred to a touch of her lips, he paid the shot and departed. The tailor was scant out of sight when she met with the tanner, who, albeit he was aged, yet lustily he saluted her, and to the wine she must. There was no nay. The widow, seeing his importunacy, calls her gossip, and along they walked together. The old man called for wine plenty, and the best cheer in the house, and in hearty manner he bids the widow welcome. They had not sitten long, but in comes a noise of musicians in tawny coats, who, putting off their caps, asked if they would have any music. The widow answered no, they were merry enough. Tut, quoth the old man, let us hear, good fellows, what you can do, and play me the beginning of the world. Alas, quoth the widow, you had more need to hearken to the ending of the world. Why, widow, quoth he, I tell thee the beginning of the world was the begetting of children, and if you find me faulty, send for the sexton. He had no sooner spoke the word, but the parson of Speen, with his corner cap, popped in at the door, who, seeing the widow sitting at the table, craved pardon and came in. Quoth she, for want of the sexton, here is the priest, if thou need him. Marry, quoth the tanner, in good time, for by this means we need not go far to be married. Sir, quoth the parson, I shall do my best in convenient place. Wherein, quoth the tanner? To wed her myself, quoth the parson. Nay, soft, said the widow, one swallow makes not a summer, nor one meeting a marriage. As I lighted on you unlooked for, so came I hither unprovided for the purpose. I trust, quoth the tanner, you came not without your eyes to see, your tongue to speak, your ears to hear, your hands to feel, nor your legs to go. I brought my eyes, quoth she, to discern colours, my tongue to say no to questions I like not, my hands to thrust from me the things that I love not, my ears to judge twixt flattery and friendship, and my feet to run from such as would wrong me. Why then, quoth the parson, by your gentle abiding in this place, it is evident that here are none but such as you like and love. God forbid I should hate my friends, quoth the widow, who might take all these in this place to be. But there is divers sorts of love, quoth the parson. You say truth, quoth the widow. I love yourself for your profession, and my friend the tanner for his courtesy and kindness, and the rest for their good company. Yet, quoth the parson, for the explaining of your love, I pray you drink to him you love best in the company. Why, quoth the tanner, have you any hope of her love? Believe me, saith the parson, as much as another. Why then, parson, sit down, said the tanner, for you that are equal with me in desire shall surely be half with me in the shot, and so, widow, in God's name, fulfil the parson's request. Seeing, quoth the widow, you are so pleasantly bent, if my courtesy might not breed contention between you, and that I may have your favour to show my fancy, I will fulfil your request. Quoth the parson, I am pleased howsoever it be. And I, quoth the tanner, why then, quoth she, with this cup of claret wine and sugar, I heartily drink to the minstrel's boy. Why, is it he you love best? Quoth the parson. I have reason, said she, to like and love them best that will be least offended with my doings. Nay, widow, quoth they, we meant you should drink to him whom you love best in the way of marriage. Quoth the widow, "You should have said so at first. But, to tell you my opinion, it is small discretion for a woman to disclose her secret affection in an open assembly. Therefore, if to that purpose you spake, let me entreat you both to come home to my house on Thursday next, where you shall be heartily welcome, and there be fully resolved of my mind. And so, with thanks at this time, I'll take my leave." The shot being paid, and the musicians pleased, they all departed, the tanner to Wallingford, the parson to Speen, and the widow to her own house, where in her wonted solemnness she settled herself in her business. Against Thursday she dressed her house fine and brave, and set herself in her best apparel. The tailor, nothing forgetting his promise, sent to the widow a good fat pig and a goose. The parson, being as mindful as he, sent to her house a couple of fat rabbits and a capon. And the tanner came himself and brought a good shoulder of mutton and 6 chickens. Beside, he brought a good gallon of sack and 1/2 pound of the best sugar. The widow received this good meat, set her maid to dress it incontinent, and when dinner time drew near, the table was covered, and every other thing provided in convenient and comely sort. At length, the guests being come, the widow bade them all heartily welcome. The priest and the tanner, seeing the tailor, mused what he made there. The tailor, on the other side, marvelled as much at their presence. Thus, looking strangely one at another, at length the widow came out of the kitchen in a fair train gown stuck full of silver pins, a fine white cap on her head, with cuts of curious needlework under the same, and an apron before her as white as the driven snow. Then, very modestly making curtsy to them all, she requested them to sit down. But they, straining courtesy the one with the other, the widow with a smiling countenance took the parson by the hand, saying, "Sir, as you stand highest in the church, so it is meet you should sit highest at the table, and therefore I pray you sit down there on the bench side. And, sir," said she to the tanner, "as age is to be honoured before youth for their experience, so are they to sit above bachelors for their gravity." And so she set him down on this side the table, over against the parson. Then, coming to the tailor, she said, "Bachelor, though your lot be the last, your welcome is equal with the first, and seeing your place points out itself, I pray you take a cushion and sit down. And now," quoth she, "to make the board equal, and because it hath been an old saying that 3 things are to small purpose if the 4th be away, so it may stand with your favour, I will call in a gossip of mine to supply this void space." "With a good will," quoth they. With that she brought in an old woman with scant ever a good tooth at her head, and placed her right against the bachelor. Then was the meat brought to the board in due order by the widow's servants, her man John being chiefest surfeiter. The widow sate down at the table's end between the parson and the tanner, who in very good sort carved meat for them all, her man John waiting on the table. After they had sitten a while and well refreshed themselves, the widow, taking a crystal glass filled with claret wine, drunk unto the whole company, and bade them welcome. The parson pledged her, and so did all the rest in due order. But still in their company the cup passed over the poor old woman's nose, insomuch that at length the old woman, in a merry vein, spake thus unto the company: "I have had much good meat among you, but as for the drink, I can nothing commend it." "Alas, good gossip," quoth the widow, "I perceive no man hath drunk to thee yet." "No, truly," quoth the old woman, "for churchmen have so much mind of young rabbits, old men such joy in young chickens, and bachelors in pig's flesh take such delight that an old sow, a tough hen, or a grey coney are not accepted, and so it is seen by me, else I should have been better remembered." "Well, old woman," quoth the parson, "take here the leg of a capon to stay thy mouth." "Now, by St. Anne, I dare not," quoth she. "No? Wherefore?" said the parson. "Marry, for fear lest you should go home with a crutch," quoth she. The tailor said, "Then taste here a piece of goose." "Now, God forbid," said the old woman, "let goose go to his kind. You have a young stomach, eat it yourself, and much good may it do your heart, sweet young man." "The old woman lacks most of her teeth," quoth the tanner, "and therefore a piece of tender chicken is fittest for her." "If I did lack as many of my teeth," quoth the old woman, "as you lack points of your good husbandry, I doubt I should starve before it were long." At this the widow laughed heartily, and the men were stricken into such a dump that they had not a word to say. Dinner being ended, the widow with the rest rose from the table, and after they had sitten a pretty while, merrily talking, the widow called her man John to bring her a bowl of fresh ale, which he did. Then said the widow, "My masters, now for your courtesy and cost I heartily thank you all, and in requital of all your favour, love, and goodwill, I drink to you, giving you free liberty when you please to depart." At these words her suitors looked so sourly one upon another, as if they had been newly champing of crabs, which when the tailor heard, shaking up himself in his new russet jerkin, and setting his hat on one side, he began to speak thus: "I trust, sweet widow," quoth he, "you remember to what end my coming was hither today. I have long time been a suitor unto you, and this day you promised to give me a direct answer." "'Tis true," quoth she, "and so I have. For your love I give you thanks, and when you please you may depart." "Shall I not have you?" said the tailor. "Alas," quoth the widow, "you come too late." "Good friend," quoth the tanner, "it is manners for young men to let their elders be served before them. To what end should I be here, if the widow should bad thee? A flat denial is meet for a saucy suitor." "But what sayst thou to me, fair widow?" quoth the tanner. "Sir," said she, "because you are so sharp set, I would wish you, as soon as you can, to wed." "Appoint the time yourself," quoth the tanner. "Even as soon," quoth she, "as you can get a wife, and hope not after me, for I am already promised." "Now, tanner, you may take your place with the tailor," quoth the parson, "for indeed the widow is for no man but myself." "Master parson," quoth she, "many have run near the goal, and yet lost the game, and I cannot help it, though your hope be in vain. Besides, parsons are but newly suffered to have wives, and for my part I will have none of the first head." "What," quoth the tailor, "is your merriment grown to this reckoning? I never spent a pig and a goose to so bad a purpose before. I promise you, when I came in, I verily thought that you were invited by the widow to make her and me sure together, and that the jolly tanner was brought to be a witness to the contract, and the old woman fetched in for the same purpose. Else I would never have put up so many dry bobs at her hands. And surely," quoth the tanner, "I, knowing thee to be a tailor, did assuredly think that thou wast appointed to come and take measure for our wedding apparel. But now we are all deceived," quoth the parson, "and therefore, as we came fools, so we may depart hence like asses." "That is as you interpret the matter," said the widow, "for I, ever doubting that a concluding answer would breed a farce in the end among you every one, I thought it better to be done at one instant, and in mine own house, than at sundry times, and in common taverns. And as for the meat you sent, it was unrequested of me. So you had your part thereof, and if you think good to take home the remainder, prepare your wallets, and you shall have it." "Nay, widow," quoth they, "although we have lost our labours, we have not altogether lost our manners. That which you have, keep, and God send to us better luck, and to you your heart's desire." And with that they departed. The widow, being glad she was thus rid of her guests, when her man John with all the rest sate at supper, she sitting in a chair by, spake thus unto them: "Well, my masters, you saw that this day your poor dame had her choice of husbands, if she had listed to marry, and such as would have loved and maintained her like a woman." "'Tis true," quoth John, "and I pray God you have not withstood your best fortune." "Trust me," quoth she, "I know not but I have. I may thank mine own foolish fancy." Thus it passed on from Bartholomew tide till it was near Christmas, at what time the weather was so wonderful cold that all the running rivers round about town were frozen very thick. The widow, being very loath any longer to lie without company, in a cold winter's night made a great fire, and sent for her man John. Having also prepared a chair and a cushion, she made him sit down therein, and sending for a pint of good sack, they both went to supper. In the end, bedtime coming on, she caused in a merriment to pluck off his hose and shoes, and caused him to be laid in his master's best bed, standing in the best chamber, hung round about with very fair curtains. John, being thus preferred, thought himself a gentleman, and lying soft after his hard labour and a good supper, quickly fell asleep. About midnight, the widow, being cold on her feet, crept into her man's bed to warm them. John, feeling one lift up the clothes, asked who was there. "Good John, it is I," quoth the widow. "The night is so extreme cold, and my chamber walls so thin, that I am like to be starved in my bed. Wherefore, rather than I would any way hazard my health, I thought it much better to come hither and try your courtesy, to have a little room beside you." John, being a kind young man, would not say or nay, and so they spent the rest of the night both together in one bed. In the morning betimes she rose up and made herself ready, and willed her man John to run and fetch her a link with all speed. "For," quoth she, "I have earnest business to do this morning." Her man did so, which done, she made him to carry the link before her, until she came to St. Bartholomew's chapel, where Sir John the priest, with the clerk and sexton, stood waiting for her. "John," quoth she, "turn into the chapel, for before I go further I will make my prayers to St. Bartholomew. So shall I speed the better in my business." When they were come in, the priest, according to his order, came to her, and asked where the bridegroom was. Quoth she, "I thought he had been here before me." "Sir," quoth she, "I will sit down and say over my beads, and by that time he will come." John mused at this matter, to see that his dame should so suddenly be married, and he hearing nothing thereof before. The widow rising from her prayers, the priest told her that the bridegroom was not yet come. "Is it true?" quoth the widow. "I promise you I will stay no longer for him, if he were as good as George a Green. And therefore dispatch," quoth she, "and marry me to my man John." "Why, dame," quoth he, "you do a jest, I trow." "John," quoth she, "I jest not, for I mean it shall be. And stand not strangely, but remember that you did promise me on your faith not to hinder me when I came to the church to be married, but rather to set it forward. Therefore set your link aside, and give me your hand, for none but you shall be my husband." John, seeing no remedy, consented, because he saw the matter could not otherwise be amended, and married they were presently. When they were come home, John entertained this dame with a kiss, which the other servants seeing, thought him something saucy. The widow caused the best cheer in the house to be set on the table, and to breakfast they went, causing her new husband to be set in a chair at the table's end, with a fair napkin laid on his trencher. Then she called out the rest of her servants, willing them to sit down and take part of their good cheer. They, wondering to see their fellow John sit at the table's end in their old master's chair, began heartily to smile, and then openly laughed at the matter, especially because their dame so kindly sate by his side, which she perceiving, asked if that were all the manners they could show before their master. "I tell you," quoth she, "he is my husband, for this morning we were married, and therefore henceforward look you acknowledge your duty towards him." The folks looked one upon another, marvelling at this strange news, which when John perceived, he said, "My masters, use not at all, for although by God's providence and your dame's favour I am preferred from being your fellow to be your master, I am not thereby so much puffed up in pride that any way I will forget my former estate. Notwithstanding, seeing I am now to hold the place of a master, it shall be wisdom in you to forget what I was, and to take me as I am. And in doing your diligence you shall have no cause to repent that God made me your master." The servants, hearing this, as also knowing his good government beforetime, passed their years with him in dutiful manner. The next day the report was over all the town that Jack of Newbury had married his dame, so that when the woman walked abroad, every one bade God give her joy. Some said that she was matched to her sorrow, saying that so lusty a young man as he would never love her, being so ancient. Whereupon the woman made answer that she would take him down in his wedding shoes, and would try his patience in the prime of his lustiness, whereunto many of her gossips did likewise encourage her. Every day, therefore, for the space of a month after she was married, it was her ordinary custom to go forth in the morning among her gossips and acquaintance to make merry, and not to return home till night, without any regard of her household, of which, at her coming home, her husband did very oftentimes admonish her in very gentle sort, showing what great inconvenience would grow thereby, the which sometimes she would take in gentle part, and sometime in disdain, saying, I am now in very good case, that he which was my servant but the other day will now be my master. This it is for a woman to make her foot her head. The day hath been when I might have gone forth when I would, and come in again when it had pleased me, without controlment. And now I must be subject to every jack's check. I am sure, quoth she, that by my gadding abroad and careless spending I waste no goods of thine. I, pitying thy poverty, made thee a man and master of the house, but not to the end I would become thy slave. I scorn, I tell thee true, that such a youngling as thyself should correct my conceit and give me instructions, as if I were not able to guide myself. But, i'faith, you shall not use me like a babe, nor bridle me like an ass. And seeing my going abroad grieves thee, where I have gone forth one day, I will go abroad 3, and for 1 hour I will stay 5. Well, quoth her husband, I trust you will be better advised. And with that he went from her about his business, leaving her sweating in her fustian furies. Thus the time passed on, till on a certain day she had been abroad in her wonted manner, and staying forth very late, he shut the doors and went to bed. About midnight she comes to the door, and knocks to come in, to whom he, looking out of the window, answered in this sort, What, is it you that keep such a knocking? I pray you get hence, and request the constable to provide you a bed, for this night you shall have no lodging here. I hope, quoth she, you will not shut me out of doors like a dog, or let me lie in the streets like a strumpet. Whether like a dog or a drab, quoth he, all is one to me, knowing no reason but that, as you have stayed out all day for your delight, so you may lie forth all night for my pleasure. Both birds and beasts at the night's approach prepare to their rest, and observe a convenient time to return to their habitation. Look but upon the poor spider, the frog, the fly, and every other silly worm, and you shall see all these observe time to return to their homes. And if you, being a woman, will not do the like, content yourself to bear the brunt of your own folly, and so farewell. The woman, hearing this, made piteous moan, and in very humble sort entreated him to let her in, and to pardon this offence, and while she lived vowed never to do the like. Her husband, at length, being moved with pity towards her, slipped on his shoes, and came down in his shirt. The door being opened, in she went quaking, and as he was about to lock it again, in very sorrowful manner she said, Alack, husband, what hap have I? My wedding ring was even now in my hand, and I have let it fall about the door. Good, sweet John, come forth with the candle, and help me to seek it. The man incontinent did so, and while he sought for that which was not there to be found, she whipped into the house, and quickly clapping to the door, she locked her husband out. He stood calling with the candle in his hand to come in, but she made as if she heard not. Anon she went up into her chamber, and carried the key with her. But when he saw she would not answer, he presently began to knock as loud as he could at the door. At last she thrust her head out at the window, saying, Who is there? "'Tis I," quoth John. "What mean you by this? I pray you come down and open the door, that I may come in." "What, sir," quoth she, "is it you? Have you nothing to do but dance about the streets at this time of night, and like a spirit of the buttery hunt after crickets? Are you so hot that the house cannot hold you?" "Nay, I pray, sweetheart," quoth he, "do not jibe any longer, but let me in." "Oh, sir, remember," quoth she, "how you stood even now at the window, like a judge on the bench, and in taunting sort kept me out of my own house. How now, Jack, am I even with you? What, John, my man, were you so lusty to lock your dame out of doors? Sirrah, remember you bade me go to the constable to get lodging. Now you have leisure to try if his wife will prefer you to a bed. You, Sir Sauce, that made me stand in the cold till my feet did freeze, and my teeth chatter, while you stood preaching of birds and beasts, telling me a tale of spiders, flies, and frogs. Go try now if any of them will be so friendly to let thee have lodging. Why go you not, man? Fear not to speak with them, for I am sure you shall find them at home. Think not they are such ill husbands as you to be abroad at this time of night." With this John's patience was greatly moved, insomuch that he deeply swore that if she would not let him in, he would break down the door. "Why, John," quoth she, "you need not be so hot. Your clothing is not so warm, and because I think this will be a warning unto ye against another time, how you shut me out of my house, catch, there is the key. Come in at thy pleasure, and look thou go to bed to thy fellows, for with me thou shalt not lie to-night." With that she clapped to the casement, and got her husband to bed, locking the chamber door fast. Her husband, that knew it was in vain to seek to come into her chamber, and being no longer able to endure the cold, got him a place among his prentices, and there slept soundly. In the morning his wife sore rose betime, and merrily made him a caudle, and bringing it up to his bed, asked him how he did. Quoth John, "Troubled with a shrew, who the longer she lives, the worse she is. And as the people of Illyris kill men with their looks, so she kills her husband's heart with untoward conditions. But trust me, wife," quoth he, "seeing I find you of such crooked qualities, that, like the spider, ye turn the sweet flowers of good counsel into venomous poison, from henceforth I will leave you to your own wilfulness, and neither vex my mind nor trouble myself to restrain you. The which, if I had wisely done last night, I had kept the house in quiet, and myself from cold. Husband," quoth she, "think that women are like starlings that will burst their gall before they will yield to the fowler, or like the fish Scolopendra, that cannot be touched without danger notwithstanding. As the hard steel doth yield to the hammer's stroke, being used to his kind, so will women in their husbands. We these are not too much cursed, and seeing ye have sworn to give me my will, I vow likewise that my wilfulness shall not offend you. I tell you, husband, the noble nature of women is such that for their loving friends they will not stick, like the pelican, to pierce their own hearts to do them good, and therefore, forgiving each other all injuries past, having also tried one another's patience, let us quench these burning coals of contention with the sweet juice of a faithful kiss, and shaking hands, bequeath all anger to the eating up of this caudle." Her husband courteously consented, and after this time they lived long together, in most goodly, loving, and kind sort, till in the end she died, leaving her husband wondrous wealthy. End of section 1. Read by Thomas Copeland. Section 2 of Jack of Newbury by Thomas Deloney. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Thomas Copeland. Chapter 2. Of Jack of Newbury, his great wealth and number of servants, and also how he brought the Queen Catherine 250 men, prepared for the war at his own cost against the King of Scots at Flodden Field. Now Jack of Newbury, being a widower, had the choice of many wives, men's daughters of good credit, and widows of great wealth. Notwithstanding, he bent his only like to one of his own servants, whom he had tried in the guiding of his house a year or two, and knowing her to be careful in her business, faithful in her dealings, and an excellent good housewife, he thought it better to have her with nothing than some other with much treasure. And beside, as her qualities were good, so was she a very comely personage, of a sweet favour and fair complexion. In the end he opened his mind unto her, and craved her goodwill. The maid, though she took this motion kindly, said she would do nothing without consent of her parents. Whereupon a letter was writ to her father, being a poor man dwelling in Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire, who, being joyful of his daughter's good fortune, speedily came to Newbury, where of her master he was friendly entertained, who, after he had made him good cheer, showed him all his servants at work, and every office in his house. Within one room, being large and long, there stood 200 looms full strong. 200 men, the truth is so, wrought in these looms all in a row. By every one a pretty boy sate making quills with mickle joy. And in another place hard by 100 women merrily were carding hard with joyful cheer, who, singing, sat with voices clear, and in a chamber close beside 200 maidens did abide, in petticoats of stamel red, and milk-white kerchiefs on their head. Their smock sleeves like to winter's snow that on the western mountains flow, and each sleeve with a silken band was featly tied at the hand. These pretty maids did never lin, and in that place all day did spin, and spinning so with voices meet, like nightingales they sung full sweet. Then to another loom came they, where children were in poor array, and every one sat picking wool, the finest from the coarse to cull. The number was 70 and 10, the children of poor silly men, and these their labours to requite had every one a penny at night, beside their meat and drink all day, which was to them a wondrous stay. Within another place likewise full 50 proper men he spies, and these were shearmen every one, whose skill and cunning there was shown. And hard by them there did remain full 80 rowers taking pain. A dye-house likewise had he then, wherein he kept full 40 men, and likewise in his fulling mill full 20 persons kept he still. Each week 10 good fat oxen he spent in his house for certainty, beside good butter, cheese, and fish, and many another wholesome dish. He kept a butcher all the year, a brewer eke for ale and beer, a baker for to bake his bread, which stood his household in good stead. 5 cooks within his kitchen great were all the year to dress his meat. 6 scullion boys unto their hands to make clean dishes, pots, and pans, beside poor children that did stay to turn the broaches every day. The old man that did see this sight was much amazed, as well he might. This was a gallant clothier sure, whose fame for ever shall endure. When the old man had seen this great household and family, then he was brought into the warehouses, some being filled with wool, some with flocks, some with ode and modder, and some with broadclothes and kerseys ready dyed and dressed, beside a great number of others, some stretched on the tenters, some hanging on poles, and a great many more lying wet in other places. Sir, quoth the old man, I wis see you be abominable rich, and sham content you shall have my daughter, and God's blessing and mine light on you both. But, father, quoth Jack of Newbury, what will you bestow with her? Marry, hear you, quoth the old man, i'faith cham but a poor man, but I thong God cham of good exclamation among my neighbours, and they will as soon take my advice for anything as a richer man's. Thick I will bestow. You shall have with a good will, because she hear very good condemnation of you in every place. Therefore she'll give you 20 nobles and a weaning calf, and when I die and my wife, you shall have the revelation of all my goods. When Jack heard his offer, he was straight content, making more reckoning of the woman's modesty than her father's money. So the marriage day being appointed, all things was prepared meet for the wedding, and royal cheer ordained. Most of the lords, knights, and gentlemen thereabout were invited thereunto, the bride being attired in a gown of sheep's russet, and a kirtle of fine worsted, her head attired with a billiment of gold, and her hair as yellow as gold, hanging down behind her, which was curiously combed and pleated, according to the manner of those days. She was led to church between 2 sweet boys, with bride laces and rosemary tied about their silken sleeves. The one of them was son of Sir Thomas Parry, the other to Sir Francis Hungerford. Then was there a fair bride cup of silver and gilt carried before her, wherein was a goodly branch of rosemary gilded very fair, hung about with silken ribbons of all colours. Next was there a noise of musicians that played all the way before her. After her came all the chiefest maidens of the country, some bearing great bride cakes, and some garlands of wheat finely gilded, and so she passed unto the church. It is needless for me to make any mention here of the bridegroom, who, being a man so well beloved, wanted no company, and those of the best sort, beside divers merchants strangers of the Stilliard that came from London to the wedding. The marriage being solemnized, home they came in order as before, and to dinner they went, where was no want of good cheer, no lack of melody. Rhenish wine at this wedding was as plentiful as beer or ale, for the merchants had sent thither 10 tons of the best in the Stilliard. This wedding endured 10 days, to the great relief of the poor that dwelt all about, and in the end the bride's father and mother came to pay their daughter's portion, which, when the bridegroom had received, he gave them great thanks. Notwithstanding, he would not suffer them yet to depart, and against they should go home, their son-in-law came unto them, saying, Father and mother, all the thanks that my poor heart can yield I give you for your good will, cost, and courtesy. And while I live, make bold to use me in anything that I am able. And in requital of the gift you gave me with your daughter, I give you here 20 pound to bestow as you find occasion, and for your loss of time and charges riding up and down, I give you here as much broadcloth as shall make you a cloak, and my mother a holiday gown. And when this is worn out, come to me and fetch more. Oh, my good son, quoth the old woman, Christ benison be with thee evermore, for to tell thee true, we had sold all our kind to make money for my daughter's marriage, and this 7 year we should not have been able to buy more. Notwithstanding, we should have sold all that ever we had before my poor wench should have lost her marriage. I, quoth the old man, should have sold my coat from my back and my bed from under me before my girl should have gone without you. I thank you, good father and mother, said the bride, and I pray God long to keep you in health. Then the bride kneeled down and did her duty to her parents, who, weeping for very joy, departed. Not long after this, it chanced, while a noble king was making war in France, that James, King of Scotland, falsely breaking his oath, invaded England with a great army, and did much hurt upon the borders. Whereupon, on the sudden, every man was appointed, according to his ability, to be ready with his men and furniture, at an hour's warning, on pain of death. Jack of Newbury was commanded by the justice to set out 6 men, 4 armed with pikes, and 2 cavaliers, and to meet the Queen in Buckinghamshire, who was there raising a great power to go against the faithless King of Scots. When Jack had received this charge, he came home in all haste, and cut out a whole broadcloth for horsemen's coats, and so much more as would make up coats for the number of 100 men. In short time he had made ready 50 tall men, well mounted, in white coats and red caps with yellow feathers, demi-lances in their hands, and 50 armed men on foot with pikes, and 50 in white coats also, every man so expert in the handling of his weapon as few better were found in the field. Himself likewise in complete armour, on a goodly barbed horse, rode foremost of the company, with a lance in his hand, and a fair plume of yellow feathers in his crest. And in this sort he came before the justices, who at the first approach did not a little wonder what he should be. At length, when he had discovered what he was, the justices and most of the gentlemen gave him great commendations for this his good and forward mind showed in this action. But some other, envying hereat, gave out words that he showed himself more prodigal than prudent, and more vainglorious than well advised, seeing that the best nobleman in the country would scarce have done so much. And no marvel, quoth they, for such a one would call to his remembrance that the king had often occasions to urge his subjects to such charges, and therefore would do at one time as they might be able to do at another. But Jack of Newbury, like the stork in the springtime, thinks the highest cedar too low for him to build his nest in, and ere the year be half done, may be glad to have his bed in a bush. These disdainful speeches being at last brought to Jack of Newbury's ear, though it grieved him much, yet patiently put them up till time convenient. Within a while after, all the soldiers of Berkshire, Hampshire, and Wiltshire were commanded to show themselves before the Queen at Stony Stratford, where her Grace with many lords, knights, and gentlemen were assembled, with 10,000 men. Against Jack should go to the Queen, he caused his face to be smeared with blood, and his white coat in like manner. When they were come before her Highness, she demanded, above all the rest, what those white coats were. Whereupon Sir Henry Englefield, who had the leading of the Berkshire men, made answer, May it please your Majesty to understand that he which rideth foremost there is called Jack of Newbury, and all those gallant men in white are his own servants, who are maintained all the year by him, whom he at his own cost hath set out in this time of extremity to serve the king against his vaunting foe. And I assure your Majesty there is not for the number better soldiers in the field. Good Sir Henry, quoth the Queen, bring the man to me, that I may see him, which was done accordingly. Then Jack with all his men alighted, and humbly on their knees fell before the Queen. Her Grace said, Gentlemen, arise, and putting forth her lily-white hand, gave it him to kiss. Most gracious Queen, quoth he, gentleman am I none, nor the son of a gentleman, but a poor clothier, whose lands are his looms, having no other rents but what I get from the backs of little sheep, nor can I claim any cognizance but a wooden shuttle. Nevertheless, most gracious Queen, these my poor servants and myself, with life and goods, are ready, at your Majesty's command, not only to spend our bloods, but also to lose our lives in defence of our king and country. Welcome to me, Jack of Newbury, said the Queen. Though a clothier by trade, yet a gentleman by condition, and a faithful subject in heart. And if thou chance to have any suit in court, make account the Queen will be thy friend, and would to God the king had many such clothiers. But tell me, how came thy white coat besmeared with blood, and thy face to be scratched? May it please your Grace, quoth he, to understand that it was my chance to meet with a monster, who, like the people of Sinomulgi, had the proportion of a man, but headed like a dog, the biting of whose teeth was like the poisoned teeth of a crocodile, his breath like the basilisk's, killing afar off. I understand his name was Envy, who assailed me invisibly, like the wicked spirit of Magunce, who flung stones at men and could not be seen. And so I came by my scratched face, not knowing when it was done. What was the cause this monster should afflict thee above the rest of thy company, no other men in the field? Although, most sovereign Queen, quoth he, this poisoned cur snarleth at many, and that few can escape the hurt of his wounding breath, yet at this time he bent his force against me, not for any hurt I did him, but because I surpassed him in hearty affection to my sovereign lord, and the poor widow offered all I had to serve my prince and country. It were happy for England, said the Queen, if in every market town there were a gibbet to hang up curs of that kind, who, like Aesop's dog lying in the manger, will do no good himself, nor suffer such as would do any. This speech being ended, the Queen caused her army to be set in order, and in warlike manner to march toward Flodden, where King James had pitched his field. But as they passed along with drum and trumpet, there came a post from the valiant Earl of Surrey, with tidings to her Grace that now she might dismiss her army, for that it had pleased God to grant the noble Earl victory over the Scots, whom he had by his wisdom and valiancy vanquished in fight, and slain their king in battle. Upon which news her Majesty discharged her forces, and joyfully took her journey to London, with a pleasant countenance, praising God for her famous victory, and yielding thanks to all the noble gentlemen and soldiers for their readiness in the action, giving many gifts to the nobility and great rewards to the soldiers, among whom she nothing forgot Jack of Newbury, about whose neck she put a rich chain of gold, at what time he with all the rest gave a great shout, saying, God save Catherine, the noble Queen of England. Many noblemen of Scotland were taken prisoners at this battle, and many more slain, so that there never came a greater foil to Scotland than this. For you shall understand that the Scottish king made full account to be lord of this land, watching opportunity to bring to pass his faithless and traitorous practice. which was when our king was in France, at tourney and Turcoing, in regard of which wars the Scots vaunted there was none left in England but beards and ploughmen, who were not able to lead an army, having no skill in martial affairs. In consideration of which advantage he invaded the country, boasting of history before he had won, which was no small grief to Queen Margaret his wife, who was eldest sister to our noble king. Wherefore, in disgrace of the Scots, and in remembrance of the famous achieved history, the Commons of England made this song, which to this day is not forgotten of many. The song. King Jamie hath made a vow, keep it well if he may, that he will be at lovely London upon St. James's Day. Upon St. James's Day at noon at fair London will I be, and all the lords in merry Scotland, they shall dine there with me. Then spake good Queen Margaret, the tears fell from her eye. Leave off these wars, most noble king, keep your fidelity. The water runs swift and wondrous deep from bottom unto the brim. My brother Henry hath men good enough. England is hard to win. Away, quoth he, with this silly fool, in prison fast let her lie, for she is come of the English blood, and for these words she shall die. With that bespake Lord Thomas Howard, the Queen's chamberlain that day. If that you put Queen Margaret to death, Scotland shall rue it alway. Then in a rage King Jamie did say, Away with this foolish mome! He shall be hanged, and the other be burned, so soon as I come home. At Flodden Field the Scots came in, which made our English men fain. At Bramston Green this battle was seen, there was King Jamie slain. Then presently the Scots did fly, their cannons they left behind. Their ensigns gay were won alway, our soldiers did beat them blind. To tell you plain, 12,000 were slain that to the fight did stand, and many prisoners took that day, the best in all Scotland. That day made many fatherless child, and many a widow poor, and many a Scottish gay lady sate weeping in her boor. Jack with a feather was lapped all in leather, his boastings were all in vain. He had such a chance with a new morris dance, he never went home again. Chapter 3. How Jack of Newbury went to receive the king as he went a progress into Berkshire, and how he made him a banquet in his own house. About the 10th year of the king's reign, his grace made his progress into Berkshire, against which time Jack of Newbury clothed 30 tall fellows, being his household servants, in blue coats, faced with sarcenet, every one having a good sword and buckler on his shoulder, himself in a plain russet coat, a pair of white kersey breeches, without welt or guard, and stockings of the same piece sewed to his slops, which had a great codpiece whereon he stuck his pins, who, knowing the king would come over a certain meadow, near adjoining to the town, got himself thither with all his men, and repairing to a certain ant-hill, which was in the field, took up his seat there, causing his men to stand round about the same with their swords drawn. The king, coming near the place with the rest of his nobility, and seeing them stand with their drawn weapons, sent to know the cause. Garrett, king-at-arms, was the messenger, who spake in this sort: Good fellow, so the king's majesty would know to what end you stand here with swords and bucklers prepared to fight. With that Jack of Newbury started up and made this answer: Harold, quoth he, return to his highness. It is poor Jack of Newbury, who, being scant marquis of a molehill, is chosen prince of ants. And here I stand with my weapons and guard about me to defend and keep these my poor and painful subjects from the force of the idle butterflies, their sworn enemies, lest they should disturb this quiet commonwealth, who this summer season are making the winter's provision. The messenger returning told his grace that it was one Jack of Newbury that stood there with his men about him to guard, as they say, a company of ants from the furious wrath of the prince of butterflies. With this news the king heartily laughed, saying, Indeed, it is no marvel he stands so well prepared, considering what a terrible tyrant he hath to deal withal. Certainly, my lords, quoth he, this seems to be a pleasant fellow, and therefore we will send to talk with him. The messenger, being sent, told Jack he must come speak with the king. Quoth he, His grace hath a horse, and I am on foot, therefore will him to come to me. Beside that, while I am away, our enemies might come and put my people in hazard, as the Scots did England while our king was in France. How dares the lamb be so bold with the lion? Quoth the herald. Why, quoth he, if there be a lion in the field, here is never a cock to fear him. And tell his majesty he might think me a very bad governor that would walk aside upon pleasure, and lead my people in peril. Herald, quoth he, it is written, he that hath a charge must look to it, and so tell thy lord my king. The message being done, the king said, My lords, seeing it will be no other, we will ride up to the Emperor of Ants, that is so careful in his government at the king's approach. Jack of Newbury and his servants put up all their weapons, and with a joyful cry flung up their caps in token of victory. Why, how now, my masters, quoth the king, is your wars ended? Let me see where is the Lord General of this great camp. With that, Jack of Newbury with all his servants fell on their knees, saying, God save the King of England, whose sight hath put my foes to flight, and brought great peace to the poor labouring people. Trust me, quoth our king, here be pretty fellows to fight against butterflies. I must commend your courage that dares withstand such mighty giants. Most dread sovereign, quoth Jack, not long ago in my conceit I saw the most provident nation of the ants summon their chief peers to a parliament, which was held in the famous city Dry Dusty, the 31st day of September. Whereas by their wisdoms I was chose their king, at what time also many bills of complaint were brought in against divers ill members of the Commonwealth, among whom the mole was attainted of high treason to their state, and therefore was banished for ever from their quiet kingdom. So was the grasshopper and the caterpillar, because they were not only idle, but also lived upon the labours of other men. Amongst the rest, the butterfly was very much misliked, but few durst say anything to him because of his golden apparel, who through sufferance grew so ambitious and malapert that the poor ant could no sooner get an egg into her nest but he would have it away, and especially against Easter, which at length was misliked. This painted ass took snuff in the nose, and assembled a great many other of his own coat, by windy wars, to root these painful people out of the land, that he himself might be seated above them all. These were proud butterflies, quoth the king. Whereupon I with my men, quoth Jack, prepared ourselves to withstand them, till such time as your majesty's royal presence put them to flight. Tosh, said the king, thou must think that the force of flies is not great. Notwithstanding, quoth Jack, their gay gowns make poor men afraid. I perceive, quoth Cardinal Wolsey, that you, being king of ants, do carry a great grudge to the butterflies. Ay, quoth Jack, we be as great foes as the fox and the snake are friends, for the one of them being subtle loves the other for his craft. But now I intend to be no longer a prince, because the majesty of a king hath eclipsed my glory, so that looking like the peacock on my black feet makes me abase my vainglorious feathers, and humbly I yield unto his majesty all my sovereign rule and dignity, both of life and goods, casting my weapons at his feet, to do any service therein his grace shall command me. God a mercy, good Jack, quoth the king, I have often heard of thee, and this morning I mean to visit thy house. Thus the king with great delight rode along until he came to the town's end, where a great multitude of people attended to see his majesty, where also Queen Catherine with all her train met him. Thus, with great rejoicing of the commons, the king and queen passed along to this jolly clothier's house, where the good wife of the house, with 80 maidens attending on her, presented the king with a beehive, most richly gilt with gold, and all the bees therein were also gold, curiously made by art, and out of the top of the same hive sprung a flourishing green tree, which bore golden apples, and at the root thereof lay divers serpents, seeking to destroy it, whom Providence and Fortitude trod under their feet, holding this inscription in their hands: Lo, here presented to your royal sight the figure of a flourishing commonwealth, where virtuous subjects labor with delight, and beat the drones to death which live by stealth. Ambition, envy, treason, loathsome serpents be, which seek the downfall of this fruitful tree. But Lady Prudence, with deep searching eye, their ill-intended purpose doth prevent, and noble Fortitude, standing always nigh, disperse their power, prepared with bad intent. Thus they are foiled that mount by means unmeet, and so, like slaves, are trodden under feet. The king favourably accepted this emblem, and receiving it at the woman's hands, willed Cardinal Wolsey to look thereon, commanding it should be sent to Windsor Castle. This cardinal was at that time Lord Chancellor of England, and a wonderful proud prelate, by whose means great variance was set betwixt the King of England and the French king, the Emperor of Almaine, and divers other princes of Christendom. Thereby the traffic of those merchants was utterly forbidden, which bred a general woe through England, especially among clothiers, insomuch that, having no sale for their cloth, they were fain to put away many of their people which wrought for them, as hereafter more at large be declared. Then was his Majesty brought into a great hall, where 4 long tables stood ready covered. And passing through that place, the king and queen came into a fair and large parlour, hung about with goodly tapestry, where was a table prepared for his highness and the queen's grace. All the floor where the king sate was covered with broad cloths instead of green rushes. These were choice pieces of the finest wool, of an azure colour, valued at £100 a cloth, which afterward was given to his Majesty. The king being set with the chiefest of his council about him, after a delicate dinner, a sumptuous banquet was brought in, served all in glass, the description whereof were too long for me to write and you to read. The great hall was also filled with lords and knights and gentlemen, who were attended by no other but the servants of the house. The ladies of honour and gentlewomen of the court were all seated in another parlour by themselves, at whose table the maidens of the house did wait in decent sort, the serving-men by themselves, and the pages and footmen by themselves, upon all whom the prentices did attend most diligently. During the king's abiding in this place there was no want of delicates. Rhenish wine, claret wine, and sack was as plentiful as small ale. Then, from the highest to the lowest, they were served in such sort as no discontent was found any way, so that great commendations redounded unto the good man of the house. The Lord Cardinal, that of late found himself galled by the allegry of the ants, spake in this wise to the king. If it should please your highness, quoth he, but to note the vain glory of these artificers, you should find no small cause of dislike in many of their actions. For an instance, the fellow of this house. He hath not stalked this day to undo himself, only to become famous by receiving of your Majesty, like Herostratus the shoemaker that burned the temple of Diana, only to get himself a name, more than for any affection he bears to your grace, as may well be proved by this. Let there be had a simple subsidy levied upon them for the assistance of your highness' wars, or any other weighty affairs of the commonwealth and state of the realm. Though it be not the 20th part of their substance, they will so grudge and repine that it is wonderful, and, like people desperate, cry out they will be quite undone. My lord cardinal, quoth the queen, under correction of my lord the king, I durst lay £100 Jack of Newbury was never of that mind, nor is not at this instant. If ye ask him, I warrant he will say so. Myself also had a proof thereof at the Scottish invasion, at what time this man, being fiefed but at 6 men, brought at his own cost 150 into the field. I would I had mo such subjects, said the king, and many of so good a mind. Oh, Harry, quoth Will Somers, then had not Empsom and Dudley been chronicled for knaves, nor sent to the Tower for treason. But then they had not known the pain of imprisonment, quoth our king, who with their subtlety grieved many others. But their subtleties was such that it brake their necks, quoth Will Somers, whereat the king and queen, laughing heartily, rose from the table. By which time Jack of Newbury had caused all his folks to go to their work, that his grace and all the nobility might see it. So indeed the queen had requested. Then came his highness, where he saw 100 looms standing in one room, and 2 men working in every one, who pleasantly sung in this sort, the Weaver's Song. When Hercules did use to spin, and Pallas wrought upon the loom, our trade to flourish did begin, while conscience went not selling broom. Then love and friendship did agree to keep the band of amity. Princes' sons kept sheep in field, and queens made cakes of wheaten flour. Then men to lucre did not yield, which brought good cheer in every bower. Then love and friendship did agree to hold the bands of amity. But when the giants huge and high did fight with spears like weavers' beams, then they in iron beds did lie, and brought poor men to hard extremes. Yet love and friendship did agree to hold the bands of amity. Then David took his sling and stone, not fearing great Goliath's strength. He pierced his brains and broke the bone, though he were 50 foot of length. For love and friendship did agree to hold the bands of amity. But while the Greeks besieged Troy, Penelope apace did spin, and weavers wrought with mickle joy, though little gains were coming in. For love and friendship did agree to hold the bands of amity. Had Helen then sate carding wool, whose beauteous face did breed such strife, she had not been Sir Paris' trull, nor caused so many lose their life. Yet we by love did still agree to hold the bonds of amity. Or had King Priam's wanton son been making quills with sweet content, he had not then his friends undone when he to Greece at gadding went. For love and friendship did agree to hold the bands of amity. The cedar trees endure more storms than little shrubs that sprout on high. The weavers live more void of harms than princes of great dignity, while love and friendship doth agree to hold the bonds of amity. The shepherd, sitting in the field, doth tune his pipe with heart's delight. When princes watch with spear and shield, the poor man soundly sleeps all night, while love and friendship doth agree to hold the bonds of amity. Yet this by proof is daily tried, for God's good gifts we are in great, and no man through the world so wide lives well contented with his state. No love and friendship we can see to hold the bands of amity. Well sung, good fellows, said our king. Light hearts and merry minds live long without grey hairs. But, quoth Will Sommers, seldom without red noses. Well, said the king, there is 100 angels to make good cheer withal, and look that every year once you make a feast among yourselves, and frankly every year I give you leave to fetch 4 bucks out of Dunnington Park, without any man's let or controlment. Oh, I beseech your grace, quoth Will Sommers, let it be with a condition. What is that? Said our king. My liege, quoth he, that although the keeper will have the skins, that they may give their wives the horns. Go to, said the queen, thy head is fuller of knavery than that purse is of crowns. The poor workman humbly thanked his majesty for his bountiful liberality, and ever since it hath been a custom among the weavers, every year presently after Bartholomew-tide, in remembrance of the king's favour, to meet together and make a merry feast. His majesty came next among the spinners and carders, who were merrily a-working, whereat Will Sommers fell into a great laughter. What ails the fool to laugh? Said the king. Marry, quoth Will Sommers, to see these maidens get their living as bulls to eat their meat. How is that? Said the queen. By going still backward, quoth Will Sommers, and I will lay a wager that they that practice so well being maids to go backward will quickly learn ere long to fall backward. But, sirrah, said the cardinal, thou didst fall forward when thou brokest thy face in Master Kingsmile's cellar. But you, my lord, sate forward, quoth Will Sommers, when you sate in the stocks at Sir Amyas Paulet's. Whereat there was greater laughing than before. The king and queen and all the nobility heedfully beheld these women, who for the most part were very fair and comely creatures, and were all attired alike from top to toe. Then, after due reverence, the maidens in dulcet manner chanted out this song, 2 of them singing the ditty, and all the rest bearing the burden. The Maiden's Song. It was a knight in Scotland born, follow, my love, come over the strand, was taken prisoner and left forlorn, even by the good Earl of Northumberland. Then was he cast in prison strong, follow my love, leap over the strand, where he could not walk nor lie along, even by the good Earl of Northumberland. And as in sorrow thus he lay, follow my love, come over the strand, the Earl's sweet daughter walked that way, and she the fair flower of Northumberland. And passing by like an angel bright, follow my love, come over the strand, this prisoner had of her a sight, and she the fair flower of Northumberland. And loud to her this knight did cry, follow my love, come over the strand, the salt tears standing in his eye, and she the fair flower of Northumberland. Fair lady, he said, take pity on me, follow my love, come over the strand, and let me not in prison die, and you the fair flower of Northumberland. Fair sir, how should I take pity on thee? Follow my love, come over the strand, thou being a foe to our country, and I the fair flower of Northumberland. Fair lady, I am no foe, he said, follow my love, come over the strand, through thy sweet love here I was stayed, for thee the fair flower of Northumberland. Why shouldst thou come here for love of me? Follow my love, come over the strand, having wife and children in the country, and I the fair flower of Northumberland. I swear by the blessed Trinity, follow my love, come over the strand, I have no wife nor children I, nor dwelling at home in merry Scotland. If courteously you will set me free, follow my love, come over the strand, I vow that I will marry thee, so soon as I come in fair Scotland. Thou shalt be a lady of castles and towers, follow my love, come over the strand, and sit like a queen in princely bowers, when I am at home in fair Scotland. Then parted hence this lady gay, follow my love, come over the strand, and got her father's ring away, to help this sad knight into fair Scotland. Likewise much gold she got by sleight, follow my love, come over the strand, and all to help this forlorn knight to wend from her father to fair Scotland. 2 gallant steeds, both good and able, follow my love, come over the strand, she likewise took out of the stable, to ride with this knight into fair Scotland. And to the jailer she sent this ring, follow my love, come over the strand, the knight from prison forth to bring, to wend with her into fair Scotland. This token set the prisoner free, follow my love, come over the strand, who straight went to this fair lady, to wend with her into fair Scotland. A gallant steed he did bestride, follow my love, come over the strand, and with the lady away did ride, and she the fair flower of Northumberland. They rode till they came to a water clear, follow my love, come over the strand, good sir, how should I follow you here, and I the fair flower of Northumberland? The water is rough and wonderful deep, follow my love, come over the strand, and on my saddle I shall not keep, and I the fair flower of Northumberland. Fear not the ford, fair lady, quoth he, follow my love, come over the strand, for long I cannot stay for thee, and thou the fair flower of Northumberland. The lady pricked her wanton steed, follow my love, come over the strand, and over the river swum with speed, and she the fair flower of Northumberland. From top to toe all wet was she, follow my love, come over the strand, this have I done for love of thee, and I the fair flower of Northumberland. Thus rode she all one winter's night, follow my love, come over the strand, till Edinburgh they saw in sight, the chiefest town in all Scotland. Now choose, quoth he, thou wanton flower, follow my love, come over the strand, where thou wilt be my paramour, or get thee home to Northumberland. For I have wife and children 5, follow my love, come over the strand, in Edinburgh they be alive, then get thee home to fair England. This favour shalt thou have to boot, follow my love, come over the strand, I'll have thy horse, go thou on foot, go get thee home to Northumberland. O false and faithless knight, quoth she, follow my love, come over the strand, and canst thou deal so bad with me, and I the fair flower of Northumberland? Dishonour not a lady's name, follow my love, come over the strand, but draw thy sword and end my shame, and I the fair flower of Northumberland. He took her from her stately steed, follow my love, come over the strand, and left her there in extreme need, and she the fair flower of Northumberland. Then sate she down full heavily, Follow, my love, come over the strand. At length 2 knights came riding by, 2 gallant knights of fair England. She fell down humbly on her knee, Follow, my love, come over the strand, saying, Courteous knights, take pity on me, and I the fair flower of Northumberland. I have offended my father dear, Follow, my love, come over the strand, and by a false knight that brought me here From the good Earl of Northumberland. They took her up behind them then, Follow, my love, come over the strand, and brought her to her father's again, and he the good Earl of Northumberland. All you fair maidens be warned by me, Follow, my love, come over the strand. Scots were never true, nor never will be, to lord, nor lady, nor fair England. Finis. After the King's Majesty and the Queen had heard this song sweetly sung by them, he cast them a great reward, and so departing thence went to the fulling mills and dye house, where a great many were also hard at work. And his Majesty, perceiving what a great number of people were by this one man set on work, both admired and commended him, saying further that no trade in all the land was so much to be cherished and maintained as this, which, quoth he, may well be called the life of the poor. And as the king returned from this place, with intent to take horse and depart, there met him a great many of children in garments of white silk, fringed with gold, their heads crowned with golden bays, and about their arms each one had a scarf of green sarcenet, fast tied. In their hands they bore silver bows, and under their girdles golden arrows. The foremost of them represented Diana, goddess of chastity, who was attended on by a train of beautiful nymphs, and they presented to the king 4 prisoners. The first was a stern and grisly woman, carrying a frowning countenance, and her forehead full of wrinkles, her hair as black as pitch, and her garments all bloody. A great sword she had in her hand, all stained with purple gore. They called her name Bellona, goddess of wars, who had 3 daughters. The first of them was a tall woman, so lean and ill-favored that her cheekbones were ready to start out of the skin, of a pale and deadly color. Her eyes sunk into her head, her legs so feeble that they could scantly carry the body. All along her arms and hands, through the skin you might tell the sinews, joints, and bones. Her teeth were very strong and sharp withal. She was so greedy that she was ready with her teeth to tear the skin from her own arms. Her attire was black, and all torn and ragged. She went barefooted, and her name was Famine. The second was a strong and lusty woman, with a look pitiless, and a merciful countenance. Her garments were all made of iron and steel, and she carried in her hand a naked weapon, and she was called the Sword. The third was also a cruel creature. Her eyes did sparkle like burning coals, her hair was like a flame, and her garments like burning brass. She was so hot that none could stand near her, and they called her name Fire. After this they retired again, and brought unto his highness 2 other personages. Their countenance was princely and amiable, their attire most rich and sumptuous. The one carried in his hand a golden trumpet, and the other a palm tree. And these were called Fame and Victory, whom the goddess of chastity charged to wait upon this famous prince for ever. This done, each child after other, with due reverence, gave unto his Majesty a sweet-smelling gillyflower, after the manner of the Persians, offering something in token of loyalty and obedience. The king and queen, beholding the sweet favour and countenance of these children, demanded of Jack of Newbury whose children they were, who answered, It shall please your highness to understand that these are the children of poor people that do get their living by picking of wool, having scant a good meal once a week. With that the king began to tell his gillyflowers, whereby he found that there was 96 children. Certainly, said the queen, I perceive God gives as fair children to the poor as to the rich, and fairer many times. And though their diet and keeping be but simple, the blessing of God doth cherish them. Therefore, said the queen, I will request to have 2 of them to wait in my chamber. Fair Catherine, said the king, thou and I have jumped in one opinion, thinking these children fitter for the court than the country. Whereupon he made choice of 12. More, 4 he ordained to be pages to his royal person, and the rest he sent to universities, allotting to every one a gentleman's living. Divers of the noblemen did in like sort entertain some of those children into their services, so that in the end not one was left to pick wool, but were all so provided for that their parents never needed to care for them. And God so blessed them that each of them came to be men of great account and authority in the land, whose posterities remain to this day worshipful and famous. The king, queen, and nobles being ready to depart, after great thanks and gifts given to Jack of Newbury, his majesty would have made him knight, but he meekly refused it, saying, I beseech your grace, let me live a poor clothier among my people, in whose maintenance I take more felicity than in all the vain titles of gentility. For these are the labouring ants whom I seek to defend, and these be the bees which I keep, who labour in this life not for ourselves, but for the glory of God, and to do service to our dread sovereign. Thy knighthood need be no hindrance of thy faculty, quoth the king. O my dread sovereign, said Jack, honour and worship may be compared to the lake of Lethe, which makes men forget themselves a taste thereof. And to the end I may still keep in mind from whence I came, and what I am, I beseech your grace let me rest in my russet coat, a poor clothier to my dying day. Seeing then, said the king, that a man's mind is a kingdom to himself, I will leave thee to the riches of thy own content, and so farewell. The queen's majesty, taking her leave of the good wife with a princely kiss, gave her a token of remembrance, a most precious and rich diamond set in gold, about the which was also curiously set 6 rubies and 6 emeralds in one piece, valued at 900 marks, and so her grace departed. But in this mean space Will Somers kept company among the maids, and betook himself to spinning as they did, which among them was held as a forfeit of a gallon of wine. But William by no means would pay it, except they would take it out in kisses, rating every kiss at a farthing. This payment we refuse for 2 causes, quoth the maids, the one, for that we esteem not kisses at so base a rate, and the other, because in so doing we should give as much as you. Chapter 4. How the maidens served Will Somers for his sauciness. The maidens consented together, seeing Will Somers was so busy both with their work and in his words, and would not pay his forfeiture, to serve him as he served. First, therefore, they bound him hand and feet, and set him upright against a post, tying him thereto, which he took in ill part, notwithstanding he could not resist them. And because he let his tongue run at random, they set a fair gag in his mouth, such a one as he could not for his life put away, so that he stood as one gaping for wind. Then one of them got a couple of dogs' droppings, and putting them in a bag, laid them in soak in a basin of water, while the rest turned down the collar of his jerkin, and put an host-cloth about his neck instead of a fine towel. Then came the other maid with a basin, and water in the same, and with the perfume in the pudding-bag flapped him about the face and lips, till he looked like a tawny Moor, and with her hands washed him very orderly. The smell being somewhat strong, Will could by no means abide it, and for want of other language cried, "Ah! Ah! Ah! Ah!" Fain he would have spat, and could not, so that he was fain to swallow down such liquor as he never tasted the like. When he had a pretty while been washed in this sort, at the length he crouched down upon his knees, yielding himself to their favour, which the maidens perceiving, pulled the gag out of his mouth. He had no sooner the liberty of his tongue, but that he cursed and swore like a divil. The maids, that could scant stand for laughing, at last asked how he liked his washing. "Godzoons," quoth he, "I was never thus washed, nor ever met with such barbers since I was born." "Let me go," quoth he, "and I will give you whatsoever you will demand." Wherewith he cast them an English crown. "Nay," quoth one of the maids, "you are yet but washed, but we will shave you ere you go." "Sweet maids," quoth he, "pardon my shaving. Let it suffice that you have washed me. If I have done a trespass to your trade, forgive it me, and I will never hereafter offend you." "Tush," said the maids, "you have made our wheels cast their bands, and bruised the teeth of our cards, in such sort as the offence may not be remitted with great penance. As for your gold, we regard it not. Therefore, as you are perfumed fit for the dogs, so we enjoin you this night to serve all our dogs, which penance, if you will swear with all speed to perform, we will let you loose." "Oh," quoth Will, "the huge elephant was never more fearful of the silly sheep than I am of your displeasures. Therefore let me loose, and I will do it with all diligence." Then they unbound him, and brought him among a great company of swine, which, when Will had well viewed over, he drave out of the yard all the sows. "Why, how now?" quoth the maids. "What mean you by this?" "Marry," quoth Will, "these be all sows, and my penance is but to serve the hogs." "It is true," quoth they, "you have overtaken us in this sort. Will, look there be not one hog unserved, we will advise you." Will Sommers stripped us his sleeves very orderly, and clapped an apron about his motley hosen, and taking a pail served the hogs handsomely. When he had given them all meat, he said thus: "My task is duly done, my liberty is won. The hogs have ate their crabs, therefore farewell, you drabs." "Nay, soft friend," quoth they, "the veriest hog of all hath yet had nothing." "Where the devil is he," said Will, "that I see him not?" "Wrapped in a motley jerkin," quoth they. "Take thyself by the nose, and thou shalt catch him by the snout." "I was never so very a hog," quoth he, "but I would always spare from my belly to give a woman." "If thou do not," say they, "eat, like the prodigal child, with thy fellow hogs, we will so shave thee as thou shalt dearly repent thy disobedience." He, seeing no remedy, committed himself to their mercy, and so they let him go. When he came to the court, he showed to the king all his adventures among the weavers' maidens, whereat the king and queen laughed heartily. Chapter 5. Of the pictures which Jack of Newbury had in his house, whereby he encouraged his servants to seek for fame and dignity. In a fair large parlour, which was wainscoted round about, Jack of Newbury had 15 fair pictures hanging, which were covered with curtains of green silk, fringed with gold, which he would often show to his friends and servants. In the first was the picture of a shepherd, before whom kneeled a great king, Viriat, who sometime governed the people of Portugal. "See here," quoth Jack, "the father a shepherd, the son a sovereign. This man ruled in Portugal, and made great wars against the Romans, and after that invaded Spain, yet in the end was traitorously slain." The next was the portraiture of Agathocles, which for his surpassing wisdom and manhood was created king of Sicilia, and maintained battle against the people of Carthage. His father was a poor potter, before whom he also kneeled, and it was the use of this king that whensoever he made a banquet, he would have as well vessels of earth as of gold set upon the table, to the intent he might always bear in mind the place of his beginning, his father's house and family. The third was the picture of Iphicrates, an Athenian born, who vanquished the Lacedaemonians in plain and open battle. This man was captain general to Artaxerxes, king of Persia, whose father was notwithstanding a cobbler, and there likewise pictured. Eumenes was also a famous captain to Alexander the Great, whose father was no other than a carter. The fourth was the similitude of Aelius Pertinax, sometime emperor of Rome. Yet was his father but a weaver, and afterward, to give example to others of low condition, to bear minds of worthy men, he caused the shop to be beautified with marble curiously cut, wherein his father before him was wont to get his living. The fifth was the picture of Diocletian, that so much adorned Rome with his magnifical and triumphant victories. This was a most famous emperor, although no other than the son of a bookbinder. Valentinian stood the next, painted most artificially, who also was crowned emperor, and was but the son of a poor rope-maker, as in the same picture was expressed, where his father was painted by him, using his trade. The seventh was the Emperor Probus, whose father, being a gardener, was pictured by him holding a spade. The 8th picture was of Marcus Aurelius, whom every age honoureth. He was both a wise and prudent emperor, and yet but a cloth-weaver's son. The 9th was the portraiture of the valiant Emperor Maximinius, the son of a blacksmith, who was there painted as he was wont to work at the anvil. In the 10th table was painted the Emperor Gallienus, who at the first was but a poor shepherd. Next to this picture was placed the pictures of 2 popes of Rome, whose wisdom and learning advanced them to that dignity. The first was the lively counterfeit of Pope John the 22, whose father was a shoemaker. He, being elected pope, increased their rents and patrimony greatly. The other was the picture of Pope Sextus, the 4th of that name, being a poor mariner's son. The 13th picture was of Lucumius, king of Lombardy, who was no better than the son of a common strumpet, being painted like a naked child walking in water, and taking hold of the point of a lance, by the which he hung fast and saved himself. The reason whereof is this: after his lewd mother was delivered of him, she unnaturally threw him into a deep stinking ditch, wherein was some water. By hap, King Agelmund passed that way, and found this child almost drowned, who, moving him somewhat with the point of his lance, the better to perceive what he was, the child, though newly born, took hold thereof with one of his pretty hands, not suffering it to slide or slip away again. Which thing the prince considering, being amazed at the strange force of this young little infant, caused it to be taken up and carefully to be fostered, and because the place where he found it was called Lama, he named the child Lemucius, who after grew to be so brave a man and so much honoured of fortune that in the end he was crowned king of the Lombards, who lived there in honour and in his succession after him, even unto the time of the unfortunate King Albovina, when all came to ruin, subversion, and destruction. In the 14th picture, Bremislus, king of Bohemia, was most artificially drawn, before whom there stood an horse without bridle or saddle, in a field where husbandmen were at plough. The cause why this king was thus painted, quoth Jack, was this: at that time the king of the Bohemians died without issue, and great strife being among the nobility for a new king, at length they all consented that a horse should be let into the field without bridle or saddle, having all determined with the most assured purpose to make him their king before whom this horse rested. At what time it came to pass that the horse first stayed himself before this Premislas, being a simple creature who then was busy driving the plough. They presently made him their sovereign, who ordered himself and his kingdom very wisely. He ordained many good laws. He compassed the city of Prague with strong walls, besides many other things meriting perpetual laud and commendations. The 15th was the picture of Theophrastus, a philosopher, a counsellor of kings, and companion of nobles, who was but son of the tailor. Seeing then, my good servants, that these men have been advanced to high estate and princely dignities by wisdom, learning, and diligence, I would wish you to imitate the like virtues, that you might attain the like honours. For which of you doth know what good fortune God hath in store for you? There is none of you so poorly born but that men of baser birth have come to great honours. The idle hand shall ever go in a ragged garment, and the slothful live in reproach. But such as do lead a virtuous life and govern themselves discreetly shall of the best be esteemed, and spend his days in credit. End of section 2. Read by Thomas Copeland. Section 3 of Jack of Newbury by Thomas Deloney. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Thomas Copeland. Chapter 6. How all the clothiers in England joined together, and with one consent complained to the king of their great hindrance sustained for want of traffic into other countries, whereupon they could get no sale for their cloth. By means of the wars our king had with other countries, many merchant strangers were prohibited from coming to England, and also our own merchants in like sort were forbidden to have dealing with France or the Low Countries, by means whereof the clothiers had most of their cloth lying on their hands, and that which they sold was at so low a rate that the money scarcely paid for the wool and workmanship, whereupon they thought to ease themselves by abating the poor workmen's wages, and when that did not prevail, they turned away their people, weavers, shearmen, spinners, and carders, so that where there was 100 looms kept in one town, there was scant 50, and he that kept 20 put down 10. Many a poor man for want of work was hereby undone, with his wife and children, and it made many a poor widow to sit with an hungry belly. This bred great woe in most places in England. In the end, Jack of Newbury intended, in the behalf of the poor, to make a supplication to the king, and to the end he might do it the more effectually, he sent letters to all the chief clothing towns in England to this effect. The letter: Well-beloved friends and brethren, having a taste of the general grief, and feeling in some measure the extremity of these times, I fell into consideration by what means we might best expel these sorrows and recover our former commodity. When I had well thought thereon, I found that nothing was more needful herein than a faithful unity among ourselves. This sore of necessity can no way be cured but by concord. For, like as the flame consumes the candle, so men, through discord, waste themselves. The poor hates the rich because they will not set them on work, and the rich hate the poor because they seem burdenous. So both are offended for want of gain. While Belinus and Brennus were at strife, the queen, their mother, in their greatest fury, persuaded them to peace, by urging her conception of them in one womb, and mutual cherishing of them from their tender years. So let our art of clothing, which, like a kind mother, hath cherished us with the excellency of her secrets, persuade us to an unity. Though our occupation be decayed, let us not deal with it as men do by their old shoes, which, after they have long borne them out of the mire, do in the end fling them on the dunghill, or as the husbandman doth by his bees, who for their honey burns them. Dear friends, consider that our trade will maintain us if we well uphold it, and there is nothing base but that which is basely used. Assemble therefore yourselves together, and in every town tell the number of those that have their living by means of this trade. Note it in a bill, and send it to me. And because suits in courts are like winter nights, long and wearisome, let there be in each place a weekly collection made to defray charges. For I tell you, noble men's secretaries and cunning lawyers have slow tongues and deaf ears, which must daily be anointed with the sweet oil of angels. Then let 2 honest, discreet men be chosen, and sent out of every town to meet me at Blackwell Hall in London on All Saints' Eve, and then we will present our humble petition to the king. Thus I bid you heartily farewell. Copies of this letter being sealed, they were sent to all the clothing towns of England, and the weavers both of linen and woolen gladly received them. So that when all the bills were brought together, there was found of the clothiers, and those they maintained, 600 persons. Moreover, every clothing town sending up 2 men to London, they were found to be 112 persons, who in very humble sort fell down before his Majesty, walking in St. James's Park, and delivered unto him their petition. The king, presently perusing it, asked if they were all clothiers, who answered, as it were one man, in this sort: We are, most gracious king, all poor clothiers, and your Majesty's faithful subjects. My lords, quoth the king, let these men's complaint be thoroughly looked unto, and their grief redressed, for I account them in the number of the best commonwealth's men. As the clergy for the soul, the soldier for defence of his country, the lawyer to execute justice, the husbandman to feed the belly, so is the skilful clothier no less necessary for the clothing of the back, whom we may reckon among the chief yeomen of our land. And as the crystal sight of the eye is tenderly to be kept from harms, because it gives to the whole body light, so is the clothier, whose cunning hand provides garments to defend our naked parts from the winter's nipping frost. Many more reasons there are which may move us to redress their griefs, but let it suffice that I command to have it done." With that his Grace delivered the petition to the Lord Chancellor, and all the clothiers cried, "God save the King." But as the king was ready to depart, he suddenly turned about, saying, "I remember there is one Jack of Newbury. I muse he had not his hand in this business, who professed himself to be a defender of true labourers." Then said the Duke of Somerset, "It may be his purse is answerable for his person." "Nay," quoth the Lord Cardinal, "all his treasure is little enough to maintain wars against the butterflies." With that Jack showed himself unto the king, and privately told his Grace of their grief anew, to whom his Majesty said, "Give thy attendance at the council chamber, where thou shalt receive an answer to thy content." And so his Highness departed. Finally it was agreed that the merchants should freely traffic one with another, and that proclamation thereof should be made, as well on the other side of the sea as in our land. But it was long before this was effected, by reason of the Cardinal, being Lord Chancellor, put off the matter from time to time, and because the clothiers thought it best not to depart before it was ended, they gave their daily attendance at the Cardinal's house, but spent many days to no purpose. Sometime they were answered my lord was busy, and could not be spoke withal, or else he was asleep, and they durst not wake him, or at his study, and they would not disturb him, or at his prayers, and they durst not displease him, and still one thing or other stood in the way to hinder them. At last Patch, the Cardinal's fool, being by their often repair thither well acquainted with the clothiers, came unto them and said, "What, have you not spoken with my lord yet?" "No, truly," quoth they, "we hear say he is busy, and we stay till his Grace be at leisure." "Is it true?" said Patch, and with that in all haste he went out of the hall, and at last came in again with a great bundle of straw on his back. "Why, how now, Patch," quoth the gentleman, "what wilt thou do with that straw?" "Marry," quoth he, "I will put it under these honest men's feet, lest they should freeze ere they find my lord at leisure." This made them all to laugh, and caused Patch to carry away his straw again. "Well, well," quoth he, "if it cost you a groat's worth of faggots at night, blame not me." "Trust me," said Jack of Newbury, "if my Lord Cardinal's father had been no hastier in killing of calves than he is in dispatching of poor men's suits, I doubt he had never worn a mitre." This he spake betwixt themselves softly, but yet not so softly but that he was overheard by a flattering fellow that stood by, who made it known to some of the gentlemen, and they straight certified the Cardinal thereof. The Cardinal, who was of a very high spirit and lofty aspiring mind, was marvellously displeased at Jack of Newbury. Wherefore in his rage he commanded and sent the clothiers all to prison, because the one of them should not sue for the other's releasement. 4 days lay these men in the Marshalsea, till at last they made their humble petition to the king for their release. But some of the Cardinal's friends kept it from the king's sight. Notwithstanding, the Duke of Somerset, knowing thereof, spake with the Lord Cardinal about the matter, wishing he should speedily release them, lest it breed him some displeasure. "For you may perceive," quoth the Duke, "how highly the king esteems men of that faculty." "Sir," quoth the Cardinal, "I doubt not but to answer their imprisonment well enough, being persuaded that none would have given me such a quip but an heretic. And I dare warrant you, were this Jack of Newbury well examined, he would be found to be infected with Luther's spirit, against whom our king hath of late written a most learned book, in respect whereof the Pope's Holiness hath entitled his Majesty Defender of the Faith. Therefore, I tell you, such fellows are fitter to be faggots for fire than fathers of families. Notwithstanding, of your Grace's request I will release them." Accordingly the Cardinal sent for the clothiers before him to Whitehall, his new-built house by Westminster, and there, bestowing his blessing upon them, said, "Though you have offended me, I pardon you. For Stephen forgave his enemies that stoned him, and our Saviour those sinful men that crucified him. So do I forgive you that high trespass committed in disgrace of my birth. For herein do men come nearest unto God in showing mercy and compassion. But see hereafter you offend no more." Touching our suit, it is granted, and tomorrow shall be published through London. This being said, they departed, and according to the cardinal's words, their business was ended. The Stilliard merchants, joyful hereof, made the clothiers a great banquet, after which each man departed home, carrying tidings of their good success, so that in short space clothing again was very good, and poor men as well set on work as before. Chapter 7. How a young Italian merchant, coming to Jack of Newbury's house, was greatly enamoured of one of his maidens, and how he was served. Among other servants which Jack of Newbury kept, there was in his house 60 maidens, which every Sunday waited on his wife to church and home again, who had divers offices. Among other, 2 were appointed to keep the beams and weights, to weigh out wool to the carders and spinners, and to receive it again by weight. One of them was a comely maiden, fair and lovely, born of wealthy parents, and brought up in good qualities. Her name was Joan. So it was that a young wealthy Italian merchant, coming oft from London thither to bargain for cloth, for at that time clothiers most commonly had their cloth bespoken, and half paid for aforehand, this Master Benedict fell greatly enamoured of this maiden, and therefore offered much courtesy to her, bestowing many gifts on her, which she received thankfully, and albeit his outward countenance showed his inward affection, yet Joan would take no knowledge thereof. Half the day sometime would he sit by her as she was weighing wool, often sighing and sobbing to himself, yet saying nothing, as if he had been born tongueless, like the men of Coromandie, and the loather to speak, for that he could speak but bad English. Joan, on the other side, that well perceived his passions, did as it were triumph over him, as one that were a bondslave to her beauty. And although she knew well enough before that she was fair, yet did she never so highly esteem of herself as at this present, so that when she heard him either sigh, or sob, or groan, she would turn her face in a careless sort, as if she had been born, like the woman of Taprobin, without ears. When Master Benedict saw she made no reckoning of his sorrows, at length he blabbed out this broken English, and spake to her in this sort: "Maitresse Joan, be me tra and fa, me love you would all mine heart, and if you no shall love me again, me know me shall die. Sweet Maitresse, love me, and by my fa and tra you shall lack nothing. First, me will give you de silk for make you a frog. Second, de fine camry for make you rough, and de third shall be for make fine handkerchief for wipe your nose." She, mistaking his speech, began to be choleric, wishing him to keep that bodkin to prick his teeth. "Ho, ho, Maitresse Joan," quoth he, "begot you are angry. O Maitresse Joan, be no chafe with your friends for nothing." "Good sir," quoth she, "keep your friendship for them that care for it, and fix your love on those that can like you. As for me, I tell you plain, I am minded not to marry." "Oh, 'tis no matter for marry. If you will come in my chamber, beshit my bed, and let me kiss you." The maid, though she were very much displeased, yet at these words she could not forbear laughing for her life. "Aha, Maitresse Joan, hold your hand, I say, and there is 4 crown, because you laugh on me. I pray you, sir, keep your crowns, for I need them not." "Yes, begot, you shall have them, Maitresse Joan, to keep in box for you." She that could not well understand his broken language mistook his meaning in many things, and therefore willed him not to trouble her any more. Notwithstanding, such was his love toward her, that he could not forbear her company, but made many journeys thither for her sake. And as a certain spring in Arcadia makes men to starve that drink it, so did poor Benedict, feeding his fancy on her beauty. For when he was in London he did nothing but sorrow, wishing he had wings like the monsters of Tartaria, that he might fly to and fro at his pleasure. When any of his friends did tell her of his ardent affection toward her, she wished them to rub him with the sweat of a mule to assuage his amorous passion, or to fetch him some of the water in Boeotia to cool and extinguish the heat of his affection. For, quoth she, let him never hope to be helped by me. Well, quoth they, before he saw thy alluring face, he was a man reasonable and wise. but is now a stark fool, being by thy beauty bereft of wit, as if he had drunk of the river Sia. And like bewitching Circes, thou hast certainly transformed him from a man to an ass. There are stones in Pontus, quoth they, that the deeper they be laid in the water, the fiercer they burn, unto the which fond lovers may fitly be compared, who the more they are denied, the hotter is their desire. But seeing it is so, that he can find no favour at your hands, we will show him what you have said, and either draw him from his dumps, or leave him to his own will. Then spake one of the weavers that dwelt in the town, and was a kinsman to this maid. I muse, quoth he, that Master Benedict will not be persuaded, but like the moth will play with the flame that will scorch his wings. Methinks he should forbear to love, or learn to speak, or else woo such as can answer him in his language. For I tell you that Joan, my kinswoman, is no taste for an Italian. These speeches were told to Benedict with no small addition. When our young merchant heard the matter so plain, he vowed to be revenged of the weaver, and to see if he could find any more friendship of his wife. Therefore, dissembling his sorrow, and covering his grief, with speed he took his journey to Newbury, and pleasantly saluted Mistress Joan. And having his purse full of crowns, he was very liberal to the workfolks, especially to Joan's kinsman, insomuch that he got his favour many times to go forth with him, promising him very largely to do great matters, and to lend him £100, wishing him to be a servant no longer. Beside, he liberally bestowed on his wife many gifts, and if she washed him but a hand, he would give her an angel. If he did but send her a child for a quart of wine, he would give him a shilling for his pains. The which's courtesy changed the weaver's mind, saying he was a very honest gentleman, and worthy to have one far better than his kinswoman. This pleased Master Benedict well to hear them say so, notwithstanding he made light of the matter. And many times when the weaver was at his master's at work, the merchant would be at home with his wife, drinking and making merry. At length, time bringing acquaintance, and often conference breeding familiarity, Master Benedict began somewhat boldly to jest with Gillian, saying that her sight and sweet countenance had quite reclaimed his love from Joan, and that she only was the mistress of his heart, and if she would lend him her love, he would give her gold from Arabia, orient pearls from India, and make her bracelets of precious diamonds. Thy garments shall be of the finest silk that is made in Venice, and thy purse shall still be stuffed with angels. Tell me thy mind, my love, and kill me not with unkindness, as did thy scornful kinswoman, whose disdain had almost cost me my life. O Master Benedict, think not the wives of England can be won by rewards, or enticed with fair words, as children are with plums. It may be that you, being merrily disposed, do speak this to try my constancy. Know then that I esteem more the honour of my good name than the sliding wealth of the world. Master Benedict, hearing her say so, desired her that, considering it was love which forced his tongue to besway his heart's affection, that yet she would be secret, and so for that time took his leave. When he was gone, the woman began to call her wits together, and to consider of her poor estate, and withal the better to note the comeliness of her person, and the sweet favour of her face, which when she had well thought upon, she began to harbour new thoughts, and to entertain contrary affections, saying, Shall I content myself to be wrapped in sheep's russet, that may swim in silks, and sit all day carding for a groat, that may have crowns at my command? No, quoth she, I will no more bear so base a mind, but take fortune's favours while they are to be had. The sweet rose doth flourish but 1 month, nor women's beauties but in young years. As the winter's frost consumes the summer flowers, so doth old age banish pleasant delight. O glorious gold, quoth she, how sweet is thy smell, how pleasing is thy sight! Thou subduest princes, and overthrowest kingdoms. Then how should a silly woman withstand thy strength? Thus she rested, meditating on preferment. minding to hazard her honesty to maintain herself in bravery, even as traders corrupt their consciences to gather riches. Within a day or two Master Benedict came to her again, on whom she cast a smiling countenance. He, perceiving that, according to his old custom, sent for wine, and very merry they were. At last, in the midst of their cups, he cast out his former question, and after farther conference she yielded, and appointed a time when he should come to her, for which favour he gave her 6 Portugues. Within an hour or two after, entering into her own conscience, bethinking how sinfully she had sold herself to folly, began thus to expostulate. "Good Lord," quoth she, "shall I break that holy vow which I made in marriage, and pollute my body which the Lord hath sanctified? Can I break the commandment of my God, and not rest accursed, or be a traitor to my husband, and suffer no shame? I heard once my brother read in a book that Bucephalus, Alexander's steed, being a beast, would not be backed by any but the emperor. And shall I consent to any but my husband? Artemisia, being a heathen lady, loved her husband so well that she drunk up his ashes, and buried him in her own bowels. And should I, being a Christian, cast my husband out of my heart? The women of Rome were wont to crown their husbands' heads with bays in token of victory, and shall I give my husband horns in token of infamy? An harlot is hated of all virtuous people, and I shall make myself a whore. O my God, forgive my sin," quoth she, "and cleanse my heart from these wicked imaginations." And as she was thus lamenting, her husband came home, at whose sight her tears were doubled, like a river whose stream is increased by showers of rain. Her husband, seeing this, would needs know the cause of her sorrow, but a great while she would not show him, casting many a piteous look upon him, and shaking her head. At last she said, "O my dear husband, I have offended against God and thee, and made such a trespass by my tongue, as hath cut a deep scar in my conscience, and wounded my heart with grief like a sword. Like Penelope, so have I been wooed, but like Penelope I have not answered." "Why, woman," quoth he, "what is the matter? If it be but the bare offence of the tongue, why shouldst thou so grieve, considering that women's tongues are like lambs' tails, which seldom stand still? And the wise man saith, where much talk is, must needs be some offence. Women's beauties are fair marks for wandering eyes to shoot at, but as every archer hits not the white, so every wooer wins not his mistress' favour. All cities that are besieged are not sacked, nor all women to be misliked that are loved. Why, wife, I am persuaded thy faith is more firm, and thy constancy greater to withstand lovers' alarums, than that any other but myself should obtain the fortress of thy heart." "O sweet husband," quoth she, "we see the strongest tower at length falleth down by the cannon's force, though the bullets be but iron. Then how can the weak bulwark of a woman's breast make resistance when the hot cannons of deep persuading words are shot off with golden bullets, and every one as big as a Portigue? If it be so, wife, I may think myself in a good case, and you to be a very honest woman. As Mars and Venus danced naked together in a net, so I doubt you and some knave have played naked together in a bed. But in faith, you queen, I will send thee to salute thy friends without a nose, and as thou hast sold thy honesty, so I will sell thy company. Sweet husband, though I have promised, I have performed nothing. Every bargain is not effected, and therefore, as Judas brought again the 30 silver plates, for the which he betrayed his master, so, repenting my folly, I'll cast him again his gold, for which I should have wronged my husband." "Tell me," quoth her husband, "what he is." "It is Master Benedict," quoth she, "which for my love hath left the love of our kinswoman, and hath vowed himself for ever to live my servant." "Oh, dissembling Italian," quoth he, "I will be revenged on him for this wrong. I know that any favour from Joan, our kinswoman, will make him run like a man bitten with a mad dog. Therefore be ruled by me, and thou shalt see me dress him in his kind." The woman was very well pleased, saying he would be there that night. "All this works well with me," quoth her husband, "and to supper will I invite Joan, my kinswoman, and in the mean space make up the bed in the parlour very decently." So the good man went forth and got a sleepy drench from the apothecary's, the which he gave to a young sow which he had in his yard, and in the evening laid her down in the bed in the parlour, drawing the curtains round about. Supper time being come, Master Benedict gave his attendance, looking for no other company but the good wife. Notwithstanding, at the last Mistress Joan came in with her kinsman, and sate down to supper with them. Master Benedict, musing at their sudden approach, yet nevertheless glad of Mistress Joan's company, passed the supper time with many pleasant conceit, Joan showing herself that night more pleasant in his company than at any time before. Therefore he gave the good man great thanks. "Good Master Benedict, little do you think how I have travelled in your behalf to my kinswoman, and much ado I had to bring the peevish wench into any good liking of your love. Notwithstanding, by my great diligence and persuasions, I did at length win her good will to come hither, little thinking to find you here, or any such good cheer to entertain her, all which I see so fallen out for your profit. But trust me, all the world cannot alter her mind, nor turn her love from you, in regard whereof she hath promised me to lie this night in my house, for the great desire she hath of your good company. And in requital of all your great courtesies showed to me, I am very well content to bring you to bed. Marry, this you must consider, and so she bade me tell you, that you should come to bed with as little noise as you could, and tumble nothing that you find, for fear of her best gown and her hat, which you will lay hard by the bedside, next her best partlet, and in so doing you may have company with her all night, but say nothing in any case till you be abed. Oh, quoth he, Maitre Joan, begot, Maitre Joan, me will no spoil he clothes for 1,000 pound. Ah, me love Maitre Joan more than my wife. Well, supper being done, they rose from the table. Master Benedict, embracing Mistress Joan, thanked her for her great courtesy and company, and then the good man and he walked into the town, and Joan hied her home to her master's, knowing nothing of the intended jest. Master Benedict thought every hour twain till the sun was down, and that he were abed with his beloved. At last he had his wish, and home he came to his friend's house. Then said John, Master Benedict, you must not in any case have a candle when you go into the chamber, for then my kinswoman will be angry, and dark places fit best lovers' desires. Oh, Mr. John, quoth he, 'tis no such matter for light. We shall find Maitre Joan well enough in the dark. And entering in the parlour, groping about, he found a gown and hat. Oh, Maitre Joan, quoth he, here is your gown and hat. We shall no hurt for 1,000 pound. Then, kneeling down by the bedside, instead of Mistress Joan, he saluted the sow in this sort. Oh, my love and my delight, it is thy fair face that hath wounded my heart, thy grey sparkling eyes, and thy lily-white hands, with the comely proportion of thy pretty body, that made me, in seeking thee, to forget myself, and, to find thy favour, lose my own freedom. But now is the time come wherein I shall reap the fruits of a plentiful harvest. Now, my dear, from thy sweet mouth let me suck the bonny balm of thy breath, and with my hand stroke those musk cheeks of thine, wherein I have took such pleasure. Come with thy pretty lips, and entertain me into thy bed with one gentle kiss. Why speak'st thou not, my sweetheart, and stretch out thy alabaster arms to enfold thy faithful friend? Why should ill-pleasing sleep close up the crystal windows of thy body so fast, and bereave thee of thy fine lordly attendants, wherewith thou wast wont to salute thy friends. Let it not offend thy gentle ears that I thus talk to thee. If thou hast vowed not to speak, I will not break it. And if thou wilt command me to be silent, I will be dumb. But thou needest not fear to speak thy mind, seeing the cloudy night concealeth everything. By this time Master Benedict was unready, and slipped into bed, where the sow lay swathed in a sheet, and her head bound in a great linen cloth. As soon as he was laid, he began to embrace his new bedfellow, and laying his lips somewhat near her snout, he felt her draw her breath very short. "Why, how now, love?" quoth he. "Be you sick? Mistress Joan, your breath be very strong. Have you no cake abed?" The sow, feeling herself disturbed, began to grunt and keep a great stir, whereat Master Benedict, like a madman, ran out of bed, crying, "De divil, de divil!" The good man of the house, being purposely provided, came rushing in with half a dozen of his neighbours, asking what was the matter. "Poh, Mat," quoth Benedict, "here be de great divil. Cry ho, ho, big gosson, I think they play the knave with me, and me will be revenged on you." "Sir," quoth he, "I, knowing you love mutton, thought pork nothing unfit, and therefore provided you a hosow. And as you like entertainment, spend Portuguese. Walk, walk. Berkshire maids will be no Italian strumpets, nor the wives of Newbury their houses." "Berkshire dog," quoth Benedict, "owl face, shack, hang doing thy wife. Have it not be for me love to sweet Mistress Joan, I will no come in your house. But farewell till I cash you. I shall make your hog-nosed butt." The good man and his neighbours laughing aloud, away went Master Benedict, and for very shame departed from Newbury before day. Chapter 8. How Jack of Newbury, keeping a very good house both for his servants and relief of the poor, won great credit thereby, and how one of his wives' gossips found fault therewith. "Good morrow, gossip. Now, by my faith, truly I am glad to see you in health. I pray you, how doth Master Winchomb?" "What, never a great belly yet? Now, fie, my faw, your husband is weight idle." "Trust me, gossip," saith Mistress Winchomb, "a great belly comes sooner than a new coat. But you must consider we have not been long married. But truly, gossip, you are welcome. I pray you sit down, and we will have a morsel of something by and by." "Nay, truly, gossip, I cannot stay," quoth she. "Indeed, I must be gone, for I did but even step in to see how you did." "You shall not choose but stay a while," quoth Mistress Winchomb. And with that a fair napkin was laid upon the little table in the parlour, hard by the fireside, whereon was set a fine cold capon, with a great deal of other good cheer, with ale and wine plenty. "I pray you, gossip, eat, and I beshrew you if you spare," quoth the one. "I thank you heartily, gossip," said the other. "But hear you, gossip, I pray you tell me, doth your husband love you well, and make much of you?" "Yes, truly, I thank God," quoth she. "Now, by my truth," said the other, "it were a shame for him if he should not. For though I say it before your face, though he had little with you, yet you are worthy to be as good a man's wife as his." "Trust me, I would not change my John for my Lord Marquis," quoth she. "A woman can be but well. For I live at heart's ease, and have all things at will, and truly he will not see me lack anything." "God's blessing on his heart," quoth the gossip. "It is a good hearing. But I pray you tell me, I heard say your husband is chosen for our burgess in the Parliament House. Is it true?" "Yes, verily," quoth his wife. "I wis it is against his will, for it will be no small charges unto him." "Tush, woman, what talk you of that? Thanks be to God, there is never a gentleman in all Berkshire that is better able to bear it. But hear you, gossip, shall I be so bold to ask you one question more?" "Yes, with all my heart," quoth she. "I heard say that your husband would now put you in your hood and silk gown. I pray you, is it true?" "Yes, in truth," quoth Mistress Winchomb, "but far against my mind, gossip. My French hood is bought already, and my silk gown is in making. Likewise the goldsmith hath brought home my chain and bracelets. But I assure you, gossip, if you would believe me, I had rather go 100 miles than wear them, for I shall be so ashamed that I shall not look upon any of my neighbours for blushing. And why, I pray you? Quoth their gossip. I tell you, dear woman, you need not be anything abashed or blush at the matter, especially seeing your husband's estate is able to maintain it. Now trust me, truly, I am of opinion you will become it singular well. Alas, quoth Mistress Winchomb, having never been used to such attire, I shall not know where I am, nor how to behave myself in it. And beside, my complexion is so black that I shall carry but an ill-favoured countenance under a hood. Now, without doubt, quoth her gossip, you are to blame to say so. Beshrew my heart, if I speak it to flatter, you are a very fair and well-favoured young woman as any is in Newbury, and never fear your behaviour in your hood, for I tell you true, as old and withered as I am myself, I could become a hood well enough, and behave myself as well in such attire as any other whatsoever, and I would not learn of never one of them all. What, woman? I have been a pretty wench in my days, and seen some fashions. Therefore you need not fear, seeing both your beauty and comely personage deserves no less than a French hood. And be of good comfort. At the first, possibly, folks will gaze something at you, but be not you abashed for that. It is better they should wonder at your good fortune than lament at your misery. But when they have seen you 2 or 3 times in that attire, they will afterward little repeat it, for every new thing at the first seems rare, but being once a little used, it grows common. Surely, gossip, you say true, quoth she, and I am but a fool to be so bashful. It is no shame to use God's gifts for out-credits, and well might my husband think me unworthy to have them, if I would not wear them. And though I say it, my hood is a fair one, as any woman wears in this country, and my gold chain and bracelets are none of the worst sort, and I will show them you, because you shall give your opinion upon them. And therewithal she stepped into her chamber and fetched them forth. When her gossip saw them, she said, Now beshrew my fingers, but these are fair ones indeed. And when do you mean to wear them, gossip? At Whitsuntide, quoth she, if God spare my life. I wish that well you may wear them, said her gossip, and I would I were worthy to be with you when you dress yourself. It should be never the worse for you. I would order the matter so that you should set everything about you in such sort as never a gentlewoman of them all should stain you. Mistress Winchomb gave her great thanks for her favour, saying that if she needed her help she would be bold to send for her. Then began her gossip to turn her tongue to another tune, and now to blame her for her great housekeeping, and thus she began. Gossip, you are but a young woman, and one that hath had no great experience of the world. In my opinion, you are something too lavish in expenses. And pardon me, good gossip, I speak but for your good will, and because I love you, I am the more bold to admonish you. I tell you plain, were I the mistress of such a house, having such large allowance as you have, I would save £20 a year that you spend to no purpose. Which way might that be? Quoth Mistress Winchomb. Indeed, I confess I am but a greenhussif, and one that hath had but small trial in the world. Therefore I should be very glad to learn anything that were for my husband's profit and my commodity. Then listen to me, quoth she. You feed your folks with the best of the beef and the finest of the wheat, which, in my opinion, is a great oversight. Neither do I hear of any knight in this country that doth it. And, to say the truth, how were they able to bear that part which they do, if they saved it not by some means? Come thither, and I warrant you that you shall see but brown bread on the board. If it be wheat and rye mingled together, it is a great matter, and the bread highly commended. But most commonly they eat either barley bread or rye mingled with peas, and such like coarse grain, which is doubtless but of small price, and there is no other bread allowed except at their own board. And in like manner for their meat, it is well known that necks and points of beef is their ordinary fare, which, because it is commonly lean, they seethe therewith now and then a piece of bacon or pork, whereby they make their pottage fat, and therewith drive out the rest with more content. And thus you must learn to do. And beside that, The midriffs and the dun and the cheeks, the sheep's heads and the gathers, which you give away at your gate, might serve them well enough, which would be a great sparing to your other meat, and by this means you would save in the year much money, whereby you might the better maintain your hood and silk gown. Again, you serve your folks with such superfluities that they spoil in manner as much as they eat. Believe me, were I their dame, they should have things more sparingly, and then they would think it more dainty. Trust me, gossip, quoth Mistress Winchomb, I know your words in many things to be true, for my folks are so corn-fed that we have much ado to please them in their diet. One doth say, this is too salt, and another saith, this is too gross, this is too fresh, and that too fat, and 20 faults they will find at their meals. I warrant you, they make such parings of their cheese, and keep such chipping of their bread, that their very orts would serve 2 or 3 honest folks to their dinner. And from whence, I pray you, proceeds that, quoth her gossip, but of too much plenty. But if faith, were they my servants, I would make them glad of the worst crumb they cast away. And thereupon I drink to you, and I thank you for my good cheer with all my heart. Much good may it do you, good gossip, said Mistress Winchomb, and I pray you, when you come this way, let us see you. That you shall, verily, quoth she, and so away she went. After this, Mistress Winchomb took occasion to give her folks shorter commons and coarser meat than they were wont to have, which at length, being come to the good man's ear, he was very much offended therewith, saying, I will not have my people thus pinched for the victuals. Empty platters make greedy stomachs, and where scarcity is kept, hunger is nourished. And therefore, wife, as you love me, let me have no more of this doings. Husband, quoth she, I would they should have enough, but it is a sin to suffer and a shame to see the spoil they make. I could be very well content to give them their bellies full, and that which is sufficient, but it grieves me, to tell you true, to see how coy they are, and the small care they have in wasting of things. And I assure you the whole town cries shame of it, and it hath bred me no small discredit for looking no better to it. Trust me no more, if I was not checked in my own house about this matter, when my ears did burn to hear what was spoken. Who was it that checked thee? I pray thee tell me. Was it not your old gossip, Dame Dainty, Mistress Trip and Go?
I believe it was.
Why, man, if it were she, you know she hath been an old housekeeper, and one that hath known the world, and that she told me was for good will. Wife, quoth he, I would not have thee to meddle with such light-brained hussifs, and so I have told thee a good many times, and yet I cannot get thee to leave her company. Leave her company? Why, husband, so long as she is an honest woman, why should I leave her company? She never gave me hurtful counsel in all her life, but always hath been ready to tell me things for my profit, though you take it not so. Leave her company. I am no girl, I would you should well know, to be taught what company I should keep. I keep none but honest company, I warrant you. Leave her company, Catha. Alas, poor soul, this reward she hath for her good will. I wish she is more your friend than you are your own. Well, let her have what she will, said her husband. But if she come any more in my house, she were as good no, and therefore take this for a warning I would advise. And so away he went. Chapter 9. How a draper in London, who owed Jack of Newbury much money, became bankrupt, whom Jack of Newbury found carrying a porter's basket on his neck, and how he set him up again at his own cost, which draper afterward became an alderman of London. There was one Randall Pert, a draper, dwelling in Watling Street, and owed Jack of Newbury 500 pounds at one time, who in the end fell greatly to decay, insomuch that he was cast in prison, and his wife with her poor children turned out of doors. All his creditors, except Winchomb, had a share of his goods, never releasing him out of prison so long as he had 1 penny to satisfy them. But when this tidings was brought to Jack of Newbury ear, his friends counselled him to lay his action against him. Nay, quoth he, If he be not able to pay me when he is at liberty, he will never be able to pay me in prison, and therefore it were as good for me to forbear my money without troubling him, as to add more sorrow to his grieved heart, and be never the near. Misery is trodden down by many, and once brought low, they are seldom or never relieved. Therefore he shall rest for me untouched, and I would to God he were clear of all other men's debts, so that I gave mine to begin the world again. Thus lay the poor draper a long time in prison, in which space his wife, which before for daintiness would not foul her fingers, nor turn her head aside for fear of hurting the set of her neckenture, was glad to go about and wash bucks at the Thames side, and to be a charwoman in rich men's houses. Her soft hand was now hardened with scouring, and instead of gold rings upon her lily fingers, they were now filled with chaps, provoked by the sharp lee and other drudgeries. At last Master Winchomb, being, as you heard, chosen against the Parliament a burgess for the town of Newbury, and coming up to London for the same purpose, when he was alighted at his inn, he left one of his men there to get a porter to bring his trunk up to the place of his lodging. Poor Randall Pert, which lately before was come out of prison, having no other means of maintenance, became a porter to carry burthens from one place to another, having on an old ragged doublet and a torn pair of breeches, with his hose out at the heels, and a pair of old broken slip-shoes on his feet, a rope about his middle instead of a girdle, and on his head an old greasy cap, which had so many holes in it that his hair started through it, who, as soon as he heard one call for a porter, made answer straight, "Here, master, what is it that you would have carried?" "Marry," quoth he, "I would have this trunk borne to the Spread Eagle at Ivy Bridge." "You shall, master," quoth he, "but what will you give me for my pains?" "I will give thee 2 pence." "A penny more, and I will carry it," said the porter. And so being agreed, away he went with his burthen, till he came to the Spread Eagle door, where on a sudden espying Master Winchomb standing, he cast down the trunk and ran away as hard as he could. Master Winchomb, wondering what he meant thereby, caused his man to run after him, and so fetched him again. But when he saw one pursue him, he ran then the faster, and in running, here he lost one of his slip-shoes, and then another, ever looking behind him, like a man pursued with a deadly weapon, fearing every twinkling of an eye to be thrust thorough. At last his breech, being tied with but one point, what with the haste he made, and the weakness of the thong, fell about his heels, which so shackled him that down he fell in the street all along, sweating and blowing, being quite worn out of breath. And so by this means the serving-man overtook him, and taking him by the sleeve, being as windless as the other, stood blowing and puffing a great while ere they could speak one to another. "Sir," quoth the serving-man, "you must come to my master. You have broken his trunk all to pieces by letting it fall." "Oh, for God's sake," quoth he, "let me go. For Christ's sake, let me go, or else Master Winchomb of Newbury will arrest me, and then I am undone for ever." Now by this time Jack of Newbury had caused his trunk to be carried into the house, and then he walked along to know what the matter was. And when he heard the porter say that he would arrest him, he wondered greatly, and having quite forgot Pert's favour, being so greatly changed by imprisonment and poverty, he said, "Wherefore should I arrest thee? Tell me, good fellow. For my own part, I know no reason for it." "Oh, sir," quoth he, "I would to God I knew none either." Then, asking him what his name was, the poor man, falling down to his knees, said, "Good Master Winchomb, bear with me, and cast me not into prison. My name is Pert, and I do not deny but I owe you £500. Yet for the love of God take pity upon me." When Master Winchomb heard this, he wondered greatly at the man, and did much pity his misery, though as yet he made it not known, saying, "Passion of my heart, man, thou wilt never pay me thus. Never think by being a porter to pay £500 debt. But this hath your prodigality brought you to, your thriftless neglecting of your business, that set more by your pleasure than your profit." Then, looking better upon him, he said, "What, never a shoe to thy foot, hose to thy leg, band to thy neck, nor cap to thy head? "Oh, Pert, this is strange. But wilt thou be an honest man, and give me a bill of thy hand for my money?" "Yes, sir, with all my heart," quoth Pert. "Then come to the scrivener's," quoth he, "and dispatch it, and I will not trouble thee." Now, when they were come thither, with a great many following them at their heels, Master Winchomb said, "Hearest thou, scrivener, this fellow must give me a bill of his hand for 500 pounds. I pray you make it as it should be." The scrivener, looking upon the poor man, and seeing him in that case, said to Master Winchomb, "Sir, you were better to let it be a bond, and have some sureties bound with him." "Why, scrivener," quoth he, "dost thou think this is not a sufficient man of himself for 500 pound?" "Truly, sir," said the scrivener, "if you think him so, you and I are of two minds." "I'll tell thee what," quoth Master Winchomb, "were it not that we are all mortal, I would take his word as soon as his bill or bond. The honesty of a man is all, and we in London," quoth the scrivener, "do trust bonds far better than honesty." "But, sir, when must this money be paid?" "Marry, scrivener, when this man is Sheriff of London." At that word the scrivener and the people standing by laughed heartily, saying, "In truth, sir, make no more ado, but forgive him. As good to do the one as the other." "Nay, believe me," quoth he, "not so. Therefore do as I bid you." Whereupon the scrivener made the bill to be paid when Randall Pert was Sheriff of London, and thereunto set his own hand for a witness, and 20 persons more that stood by set to their hands likewise. Then he asked Pert what he would have for carrying his trunk. "Sir," quoth he, "I should have 3 pence, but seeing I find you so kind, I will take but 2 pence at this time." "Thanks, good Pert," quoth he, "but for thy 3 pence there is 3 shillings, and look thou come to me to-morrow morning betimes." The poor man did so, at what time Master Winchomb had provided him out of Birchen Lane a fair suit of apparel, merchant-like, with a fair black cloak, and all other things fit to the same. Then he took him a shop in Canweek Street, and furnished the same shop with 1,000 pounds worth of cloth. By which means, and other favours that Master Winchomb did him, he grew again into great credit, and in the end became so wealthy that while Master Winchomb lived he was chose sheriff, what time he paid 500 pounds every penny, and after died an alderman of the city. End of section 3. Read by Thomas Copeland. Section 4 of Jack of Newbury by Thomas Deloney. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Thomas Copeland. Section 4. Chapter 10. How Jack of Newbury's servants were revenged of their dame's tattling gossip. Upon a time it came to pass, when Master Winchomb was far from home, and his wife gone abroad, that Mistress Manybetter, Dame Tittle-tattle, Gossip Pint-pot, according to her old custom, came to Mistress Winchomb's house, perfectly knowing of the good man's absence, and little the good wife was from home, where, knocking at the gate, Tweedle stepped out, and asked who was there, where, hastily opening the wicket, he suddenly discovered the full proportion of this foul beast, who demanded if their mistress were within. "What, Mistress Frank?" quoth he. "In faith, welcome. How have you done a great while? I pray you come in." "Nay, I cannot stay," quoth she, "notwithstanding I did call to speak a word or two with your mistress. I pray you tell her that I am here." "So I will," quoth he, "so soon as she comes in." Then said the woman, "What, is she abroad? Why then, farewell, good Tweedle." "Why, what haste, Mistress Frank?" quoth he. "I pray you stay and drink ere you go. I hope a cup of new sack will do your old belly no hurt." "What," quoth she, "have you new sack already? Now, by my honesty, I drunk none this year, and therefore I do not greatly care if I take a taste before I go." And with that she went into the wine cellar with Tweedle, where first he set before her a piece of powdered beef, as green as a leek, and then, going into the kitchen, he brought her a piece of roasted beef hot from the spit. Now certain of the maidens of the house, and some of the young men, who had long before determined to be revenged of this prattling hussif, came into the cellar one after another, one of them bringing a great piece of a gammon of bacon in his hand, and every one bade Mistress Frank welcome. And first one drank to her, and then another, and so the third, the fourth, and the fifth, so that Mistress Frank's brains was as mellow as a pippin at Michaelmas, and so light that, sitting in the cellar, she thought the world ran round. They, seeing her to fall into merry humours, whetted her on in merriment as much as they could, saying, Mistress Frank, spare not, I pray you, but think yourself as welcome as any woman in Newbury, for we have cause to love you because you love our mistress so well. Now, I assure you, quoth she, lisping in her speech, her tongue waxing somewhat too big for her mouth, I love your mistress well indeed, as if she were my own daughter. Nay, but hear you, quoth they, she begins not to deal well with us now. No, my lads, quoth she. Why so? Because, quoth they, she seeks to bar us of our allowance, telling our master that he spends too much in housekeeping. Nay, then, quoth she, your mistress is an ass and a fool, and though she go in her hood, what care I? She is but a girl to me. Twiddle twaddle, I know what I know. Oh, go to, drink to me. Well, Tweedle, I drink to thee with all my heart. Why, thou whoreson, when wilt thou be married? Oh, that I were a young wench for thy sake. But 'tis no matter, though I be but a poor woman, I am a true woman, hang dogs. I have dwelt in this town these 30 winters. Why then, quoth they, you have dwelt here longer than our master. Your master, quoth she, I knew your master a boy when he was called Jack of Newbury. Ay, Jack, I knew him called plain Jack, and your mistress, now she is rich and I am poor. But 'tis no matter, I knew her, a draggle-tail girl, mark ye. But now, quoth they, she takes upon her lustily, and hath forgot what she was. Tush, what will you have of a green thing? Quoth she. Here, I drink to you, so long as she goes where she lists gossiping. And 'tis no matter. Little said is soon amended. But hear ye, my masters, though Mistress Winchomb go in her hood, I am as good as she. I care not who telleth her. I spend not my husband's money in cherries and codlings. Go to, I know what I say well enough. I am sure I am not drunk. Mistress Winchomb, mistress. No, Nan Winchomb, I will call her name plain Nan. What, I was a woman when she was, Sir Reverence, a paltry girl, though now she goes in her hood and chain of gold. What care I for her? I am her elder, and I know more of her tricks. Nay, I warrant you I know what I say. 'Tis no matter. Laugh at me, and spare not. I am not drunk, I warrant. And with that, being scant able to hold open her eyes, she began to nod, and to spill the wine out of the glass, which they, perceiving, let her alone, going out of the cellar till she was sound asleep. And in the mean space they devised how to finish this piece of knavery. At last they consented to lay her forth at the backside of the house, half a mile off, even at the foot of a stile, that whosoever came next over might find her. Notwithstanding, Tweedle stayed hard by to see the end of this action. At last came a notable clown from Greenham, taking his way to Newbury, who, coming hastily over the stile, stumbled at the woman and fell down clean over her. But in the starting up, seeing it was a woman, cried out, Alas, alas, how now? What is the matter? Quoth Tweedle. Oh, quoth he, here lies a dead woman. A dead woman? Quoth Tweedle. That's not so, I trow. And with that he tumbled her about. Bones of me, quoth Tweedle, 'tis a drunken woman, and one of the town undoubtedly. Surely it is great pity she should lie here. Why, do you know her? Quoth the clown. No, not I, quoth Tweedle. Nevertheless, I will give thee half a groat, and take her in thy basket, and carry her throughout the town, and see if anybody know her. Then, said the other, let me see the money, and I will. For by the mass, she earned not half a groat this great while. There it is, quoth Tweedle. Then the fellow put her in his basket, and so lifted her upon his back. Now, by the mass, she stinks vilely of drink, or wine, or something. But tell me, what shall I say when I come into the town? Quoth he. First, quoth Tweedle, I would have thee, so soon as ever thou canst, go to the town's end, with a lusty voice to cry, Oyez, and then say, Who knows this woman? Who? And though possibly some will say, I know her, and I know her, yet do not thou set her down till thou comest to the market cross, and there use the like words, and if any be so friendly to tell thee where she dwells, then just before her door cry so again, and if thou perform this bravely, I will give thee half a groat more. Master Tweedle, quoth he, I know you well enough. You dwell with Master Winchomb, do you not? Well, if I do it not in the nick, give me never a penny. And so away he went till he came to the town's end, and there he cries out as boldly as any bailiff's man, Oyez! Who knows this woman? Who? Then said the drunken woman in the basket, her head falling first on one side and then on the other side, Who call me? Who? Then said he again, Who knows this woman? Who? Who call me? Who? Quoth she. And look how oft he spake the one, she spake the other, saying still, Who call me? Who call me? Who? Whereat all the people in the street fell into such a laughing that the tears ran down again. At last one made answer, saying, Good fellow, she dwells in the North Brook Street, a little beyond Winchomb's. The fellow, hearing that, goes down thither in all haste, and there, in the hearing of 100 people, cries, Who knows this woman? Who? Whereat her husband comes out, saying, Marry, that do I, too well. God help me then, said the clown, if you know her, take her, for I know her not, but for a drunken beast. And as her husband took her out of the basket, she gave him a sound box on the ear, saying, What, you queens, do you mock me? And so was carried in. But the next day, when her brains were quiet, and her head cleared of those foggy vapours, she was so ashamed of herself that she went not forth of her doors a long time after. And if anybody did say unto her, Who call me? Who? She would be so mad and furious that she would be ready to draw her knife and to stick them, and scold as if she strove for the best game at the cucking-stool. Moreover, her prattling to Mistress Winchomb's folks of their mistress made her on the other side to fall out with her, in such sort that she troubled them no more, either with her company or her counsel. Chapter 11. How one of Jack of Newbury's maidens became a lady. At the winning of Morles in France, the noble Earl of Surrey, being at that time Lord High Admiral of England, made many knights. Among the rest was Sir George Ridley, brother to Sir Edward Ridley, and sundry other whose valour's fame surpassed their wealth, so that when peace bred a scarcity in their purse, and that their credits grew weak in the city, they were enforced to ride into the country, where at their friends' houses they might have favourable welcome without coin or grudging. Among the rest, Jack of Newbury, that kept a table for all comers, was never lightly without many such guests, where they were sure to have both welcome and good cheer, and their mirth no less pleasing than their meat was plenty. Sir George, having lain long at board in this brave yeoman's house, at length fell in liking of one of his maidens, who was as fair as she was fond. This lusty wench he so allured with hope of marriage that at length she yielded him her love, and therewithal bent her whole study to work his content. But in the end she so much contented him that it wrought altogether her own discontent. To become high, she laid herself so low that the night suddenly fell over her, which fall became the rising of her belly. And when the wanton perceived herself to be with child, she made her moan unto the night, saying, Ah, Sir George, now is the time to perform your promise, or to make me a spectacle of infamy to the whole world for ever. In the one you shall discharge the duty of a true knight, but in the other show yourself a most perjured person. Small honour will it be to boast in the spoil of poor maidens, whose innocency all good knights ought to defend. Why, you lewd paltry thing, quoth he, comest thou to father thy bastard upon me? Away, ye dunghill carrion, away! Here, you, good hussif, get you among your companions. and lay your litter where you list. But if you trouble me any more, trust me you shall dearly abide it." And so, bending his brows like the angry god of war, he went his ways, leaving the child-breeding wench to the hazard of her fortune, either good or bad. This poor maiden, seeing herself for her kindness thus cast off, shed many tears of sorrow for her sin, inveighing with many bitter groans against the inconstancy of love-alluring men, and in the end, when she saw no other remedy, she made her case known unto her mistress, who, after she had given her many checks and taunts, threatening to turn her out of doors, she opened the matter to her husband. So soon as he heard thereof, he made no more to do, but presently posted to London after Sir George, and found him at my Lord Admiral's. "What, Master Winchomb," quoth he, "you are heartily welcome to London, and I thank you for my good cheer. I pray you, how doth your good wife and all your friends in Berkshire?" "All well and merry, I thank you, good Sir George," quoth he. "I left them in health, and hope they do so continue. And trust me, sir," quoth he, "having earnest occasion to come up to talk with the bad debtor, in my journey it was my chance to light in company of a gallant widow. A gentlewoman she is, of wondrous good wealth, whom grisly death bereft of a kind husband, making her a widow, ere she had been half a year a wife. Her land, Sir George, is as well worth £100 a year as 1 penny, being as fair and comely a creature as any of her degree in our whole country. Now, sir, this is the worst. By the reason that she doubts herself to be with child, she hath vowed not to marry these 12 months. But because I wish you well, and the gentlewoman no hurt, I came of purpose from my business to tell you thereof. Now, Sir George, if you think her a fit wife for you, ride to her, woo her, win her, and wed her." "I thank you, good Master Winchomb," quoth he, "for your favour ever toward me, and gladly would I see this young widow, if I wist where she dwells." "Not half a mile from my house," quoth Master Winchomb, "and I can send for her at any time, if you please." Sir George, hearing this, thought it was not best to come there, fearing Joan would father a child upon him, and therefore said he had no leisure to come from my lord. "But," quoth he, "would I might see her in London, on the condition it cost me 20 nobles." "Tush, Sir George," quoth Master Winchomb, "delay in love is dangerous, and he that will woo a widow must take time by the forelock, and suffer none other to step before him, lest he leap without the widow's love. Notwithstanding, seeing now I have told you of it, I will take my gelding and get me home. If I hear of her coming to London, I will send you word, or perhaps come myself. Till when, adieu, good Sir George." Thus parted Master Winchomb from the knight, and, being come home, in short time he got a fair taffety gown and a French hood for his maid, saying, "Come, ye drab, I must be fain to cover a foul fault with a fair garment. Yet all will not hide your great belly. But if I find means to make you a lady, what wilt thou say then?" "Oh, master," quoth she, "I shall be bound while I live to pray for you." "Come then, minion," quoth her mistress, "and put you on this gown and French hood, for, seeing you have lain with a knight, you must needs be a gentlewoman." The maid did so, and being thus attired, she was set on a fair gelding, and a couple of men sent with her up to London. And being well instructed by her master and dame what she should do, she took her journey to the city in the term time, and lodged at the Bell in the Strand. And Mistress Lovelace must be her name, for so her master had warned her to call herself. Neither did the men that waited on her know the contrary, for Master Winchomb had borrowed them of their master, to wait upon a friend of his in London, who could not spare any of his own servants. At that time, notwithstanding, they were appointed, for the gentlewoman's credit, to say they were her own men. This being done, Master Winchomb sent Sir George a letter, that the gentlewoman which he told him of was now in London, lying at the Bell in the Strand, having great business at the term. With which news Sir George's heart was on fire, till such time as he might speak with her. 3 or 4 times went he thither, and still she would not be spoken withal, the which close keeping of herself made him the more earnest in his suit. At length he watched her so narrowly that, finding her going forth in an evening, he followed her, she having one man before and another behind. Carrying a very stately gait in the street, it drove him into the greater liking of her, being the more urged to utter his mind, and suddenly stepping before her, he thus saluted her. "Gentlewoman, God save you. I have often been at your lodging, and could never find you at leisure." "Why, sir," quoth she, counterfeiting her natural speech, "have you any business with me?" "Yes, fair widow," quoth he, "as you are a client to the law, so am I a suitor for your love. And may I find you so favourable to let me plead my own case at the bar of your beauty, I doubt not but to unfold so true a tale as I trust will cause you to give sentence on my side." "You are a merry gentleman," quoth she, "but for my own part I know you not. Nevertheless, in a case of love, I will not let to your suit, though perhaps I help you a little therein. And therefore, sir, if it please you to give attendance at my lodging upon my return from the temple, you shall know more of my mind." And so they parted. Sir George, receiving hereby some hope of good hap, stayed for his dear at her lodging door, whom at her coming she friendly greeted, saying, "Surely, sir, your diligence is more than the profit you shall get thereby. But I pray you, how shall I call your name?" "George Wrigley," quoth he, "I am called, and for some small deserts I was knighted in France." "Why then, Sir George," quoth she, "I have done you too much wrong to make you thus dance attendance on my worthless person. But let me be so bold to request you to tell me how you came to know me. For my own part, I cannot remember that ever I saw you before." "Mistress Lovelace," said Sir George, "I am well acquainted with a good neighbour of yours, called Master Winchomb, who is my very good friend, and, to say the truth, you were commended unto me by him." "Truly, Sir George," said she, "you are so much the better welcome. Nevertheless, I have made a vow not to love any man for this 12-month space, and therefore, sir, till then I would wish you to trouble yourself no further in this matter till that time be expired. And then, if I find you not entangled to any other, and that by trial I find out the truth of your love, for Master Winchcomb's sake your welcome shall be as good as any other gentleman's whatsoever." Sir George, having received this answer, was wondrous woe, cursing the day that ever he meddled with Joan, whose time of deliverance would come long before a 12-month were expired, to his utter shame and overthrow of his good fortune. For by that means should he have Master Winchcomb his enemy, and therewithal the loss of this fair gentlewoman. Wherefore, to prevent this mischief, he sent a letter in all haste to Master Winchcomb, requesting him most earnestly to come up to London, by whose persuasion he hoped straight to finish the marriage. Master Winchcomb fulfilled his request, and then presently was the marriage solemnized at the Tower of London, in presence of many gentlemen of Sir George's friends. But when he found it was Joan, whom he had gotten with child, he fretted and fumed, stamped and stared like a divil. "Why," quoth Master Winchcomb, "what needs all this? Came you to try my table, to make my maid your strumpet? Had you no man's house to dishonour but mine? Sir, I would you should know that I account the poorest wench in my house too good to be your whore, were you 10 knights, and seeing you took pleasure in making her your wanton, take it no scorn to make her your wife, and use her well too, or you shall hear of it. And hold thee, Joan," quoth he, "there is £100 for thee, and let him not say thou comest to him a beggar." Sir George, seeing this, and withal casting in his mind what a friend Master Winchcomb might be to him, taking his wife by the hand, gave her a loving kiss, and Master Winchcomb great thanks. Whereupon he willed him for 2 years' space to take his diet and his ladies at his house, which the knight accepting, rode straight with his wife to Newbury. Then did the mistress make curtsy to the maid, saying, "You are welcome, madam," giving her the upper hand in all places. And thus they lived afterward in great joy. And our king, hearing how Jack had matched Sir George, laughing heartily thereat, gave him a living for ever, the better to maintain my lady his wife. Finis. End of the History of John Winchcomb, usually called Jack of Newbury, by Thomas Deloney. Read by Thomas Copeland.